Hey everyone, hey Curry and Ninja and G. Thanks very much for joining me on this Night of the Living Dead watch along. The first here on the Boneyard. So let me know, give us a thumbs up if everything's okay, because this is the first one I've run. So just let me know if you could hear me and you can see me all right. But I know that Night of the Living Dead has kind of been done to death, pun intended, as I said in the description. But I figured if I was going to do a stream, then it will be good to do the first one, the inaugural stream here on the Boneyard, talking about the film that kind of was one of the films that started it all for me. Night of the Living Dead really is that important in my film education, my learning about film, my study of film, my enjoyment of film. It really is quite a big film and incredible film that has taught me a lot about cinema and a lot about passion, determination, and I guess a lot about being an independent artist and just paving your own path ahead with a passion and a love of cinema. And I think that's really is what Romero did. I really do. So my relationship with this film began, if you don't mind us telling the origin story, my relationship with this movie began many, many years ago. It's actually one of the earliest memories that I have of cinema. So many moons ago, when I was a little toddler, I mean, I'm talking, this is 5 or 6 years of age. I used to go and stay at my grandparents' house when my mother and father were out for the weekend, going drinking or whatever they were doing. And one night, my grandmother kind of fell asleep after a few sherries in the in a comfy chair, slippers next to her. I remember it really well. It's a proper vivid memory. And I got a hold of the TV remote, kind of surfed around a little bit, and landed on Night of the Living Dead just at the right time. As you know, the car was kind of winding along those roads. I'd missed the title, but the car was coming up that cemetery drive where the sign for the cemetery is there, and the camera just kind of pans around with them and then pans back to the right and follows them up the road. That's when I tuned in, literally, just long enough to see that American flag, the gravestones, and directed by George Andrew Romero. And that was it. I was hooked, man. It was creepy right from the first couple of minutes for a kid of that young age, and it scared the living daylights out of us. I mean, really scared us. And I mean, I suppose it would any 5 or 6 year old kid watching, zombies attacking people in a house, the house that's kind of the element of safety for a young kid. It's your family, it's your house, that's where you're safe. I didn't feel safe in my bed or anything for the next few nights. I didn't tell my parents I'd watched it. I kind of went off, left my grandmother asleep in the chair after it, crawled onto that had a, what do you call it, like a foldy out bed, a couch that folds into a bed for me to stay in, kind of crawl into that and just kind of lay there all night scared, thinking about the film. And man, that was it. I was hooked. Ever since then, I've been a massive fan of Night of the Living Dead. A few years later, when I started buying VHSs, I started to see who Romero was, and I bought all of his films. And I watched them in order. I tried to find them in order if I could. Martin, obviously, The Crazies, Jack's Wife, Season of the Witch, and There's Always Vanilla were very hard to find then, obviously. But I did eventually find them on really old, decrepit kind of VHS's American slip covers on secondhand markets and video stores, and I just love his work. He became one of my favorite filmmakers. It does have a certain charm, yes. Thanks, Curry. I guess it is a good choice, especially given the influence and impact of Romero. He did have a huge impact, I think. And I think his legacy is felt throughout horror, and not just horror, independent cinema still to this day, I think. I really think it is. Hey, Todd, thanks for joining us. I'm John, and welcome to the Boneyard. Kerry and Ninja and G are in the chat. Fantastic people too. So thank you everyone for joining us. So back to the origin stories of this. I guess Night of the Living Dead followed us all the way through my life, right from being a kid. I was obsessed with Romero's work, finding those hard ones. I mean, people, let's crack open a beer, I think. I'm going to have a red stripe. I've got a few here to have. I've got some nerves with this being the inaugural live stream for the Boneyard, so forgive us if I indulge a little bit. But I always did. I mean, when I got to be a teenager, I kind of started enjoying Romero's work more with a beer. When I found my own kind of friends and friend group who liked the same kind of things that I liked, we would kind of party with Dawn of the Dead. Would have a few beers and, would watch Dawn of the Dead kind of religiously. And Day of the Dead especially. Day of the Dead was more of would have a smoke and then watch a kind of movie because it was more chilled. But once I found like-minded friends, Romero was a big part of our lives. To this day, we still laugh and talk about it. And one of my best friends now, who lives in the States, Lewis Tomlin, we gave him the nickname Egghead. It's like an affectionate term because we watched Day of the Dead all the time. And because he was the smartest one, well, still is the smartest one out of all of us, he became a scientist in the States. We still call him Egghead, but it was a sign of respect for him because we knew he was the smartest one, And but Romero had a huge impact, I think, on all of our lives as a teenager, and still to this day. Once I got to kind of student level of filmmaking, I studied bachelor's and an MA in film, and I taught film for a time. For 5 years, I taught film studies, film production, history of film, film editing. And Romero was always in the back of my mind throughout that. We'll get into that once we start watching the movie, Romero's techniques, and how some of them really shouldn't work, but how Night of the Living Dead is a very organic film. And it's almost an accident that it's as good as it is and that it's as impactful as it is, I would say. Chilled. Yeah, chill, he says. That's scarier than Night and Dawn combined. It is indeed. It is scarier, I think. Hey, Perry, thanks for joining us. Having a lot of freezing moments on here today, but it might be this end. Hopefully that's okay. Let us know, everybody. This is like I say, it's the inaugural one. I'm just running this through YouTube. So it's the first time. If it goes well, I'll probably invest in some decent streaming software and we'll see where it goes. But I do apologize, Perry, if you're having any problems. It might be my end, but hopefully YouTube's running everything okay. Day of the Dead, it is chill. It is, Todd. It's a great movie. It's, Day of the Dead for me was kind of Romero's best film as a director. He is a fine director. Night of the Living Dead, Vanilla, Crazies, Jack's Wife, Season of the Witch. But once he gets to Creepshow and Day of the Dead, he's nailed his technique. He really has. Creepshow is still a beautiful looking film and my favorite kind of comic book influence movie. I think it's a beautiful looking movie, but Day of the Dead for me is perfect. Perfect as a director. The sound's perfect. I love that. I know some people didn't like John Harrison's score for Day of the Dead, but I thought it was perfect. I really did like it. But I think Day of the Dead is, in my opinion, Romero's best film as a director because everything was just perfect. He had the sound perfect. The images were perfect. Editing was perfect. He had Gornick in there shooting, who'd been shooting with him since Martin, and Gornick kind of just perfected his shooting techniques at that point. Savini with that beautiful special effects work, still to this day praised as one of the best special effects, visual effects films, special makeup effects films. I mean, it still blows my mind just how good that film is. I also think Night is brilliant, but we'll get into that. But Day of the Dead, yep, in my opinion, Todd, I think it's his best film as a director. Day is your favorite of the trilogy, cool. But I would hardly call it chill. Yeah, I guess it's got a chilled atmosphere, I guess, which is that the background music. I think, like I say, a lot of people complain. I remember watching the Avery and Tarantino podcast, and I think it was one of those guys said they didn't like he's got that kind of marimba synth score that Harrison brings to it. Harrison, on a little shoot off, is actually my favorite of the kind of Romero alumni. He went on to direct effects with Joe from Captain Rhodes from Day of the Dead, which is a fine film. He also went on to direct the miniseries of Dune, which I have a poster of there in the background. I really like Harrison. He was Romero's assistant director at Laurel Productions, and he went on to direct some fine films himself. I really like John Harrison. But I think that's maybe what people think's chilled about it. It's got quite that relaxing, chilled score. But I agree, it's not chill. It's actually quite high tension. And I think it's probably the most high tension of any of Romero's films. Because, like I say, when we were teenagers, me and my friends kind of partied with Dawn of the Dead. It was a party type film, a party atmosphere. There is tension towards the end, of course, but Day of the Dead, right from the very beginning, feels like it's an elastic band just getting pulled tighter and tighter and tighter. And obviously, in the end, once Captain Rhodes snaps, I guess you could say, and Rickles and Steele, the crap hits the fan there, I think. But Day of the Dead, like I say, I think it's my favorite of his as a director. It really is. Hi, Ian. Thanks for joining us. Dawn of the Dead lovers went sweet on Day. I remember. I mean, I know Day was 85. I've got the VHS back there. You can probably just see it above my head there. That's the date. That's my old VHS Day of the Dead from. I think I bought that in early 90s. That was the Millennium Films release. I think it's cut that one if I remember, and they definitely cut some of the swear words out of that one because Terry Alexander says right. I could be doing all this even if all this wasn't going on instead of shit. I could be doing that even if all this wasn't going on. So there's some dubbing goes on in that one, I think, the Millennium one. But I like the kind of glow in the dark style you've got going on there with it. But I kept it all these years. I kept it. It's right next to the dark half there. But that was the kind of video that we religiously watched when we were teenagers. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Ian. So anyway, back to, I guess, Romero, Night of the Living Dead. I studied it as a student. Just to see what it was about and how it was together and why it worked and how it worked and why I liked it. And it was the editing. And I kind of became an editor. I'm a freelance editor now. It's what I do to make a living when I'm not teaching. I'm editing videos at the minute for Squabblebox HQ. Dave might join us in the chat. And that's a great relationship I've got going with those. We both love the same things, old TV shows. So we've got a great thing going. But it was Night of the Living Dead that made me fall in love with editing. And it's really important. It was like, that was a film that made me realize editing was where I wanted to go. I'd love to direct. I've directed short films, wrote short films. I've scored short films. I also play a little bit, all the music on the Boneyard there. You can see the keyboard in the background. I try to compose bits of music here in the room. Welcome to the Boneyard. This kind of is the Boneyard. This is the room I do all the stuff in for the channel. And so anyway, I studied it. And then once I became a teacher, I used Night of the Living Dead in teaching. So it's been with me my whole life as a film fan, right from the very beginning. And I guess that's why it's so important to us and why I wanted to do it for the first watch along. And if everybody's ready, give us a thumbs up there. I put the Cult Cinema Classics link in the description below the film. So everybody give me a thumbs up when we're ready to go on this. Cult Cinema Classics. I've always admired this channel. I found lots of Roger Corman movies on here, which I really liked. They did some Paletti Tedeschi stuff from the Italian cinema. And they also have a few of the Italian horrors on here as well. And loads of great black and white westerns. They're a great channel here on YouTube for watching older movies. So there was a couple of better looking prints. But I really like this channel, so I thought I'd share the link with this one. So feel free to find it on another channel if you like. But I just wanted to give Cult Cinema Classics some love. I promise you, they haven't sponsored this or anything, but I just really like that channel. Thumbs up, you can't find the thing. Oh, Ganja and Hess, yes. Well, Todd, that was actually, Garner and Hess. I can't get the camera the wrong way. Ganja and Hess, that was... So when I was teaching cinema, they asked me to program some films for the students to watch, films that had inspired me. And we'll get into Ganja and Hess because it was Night of the Living Dead that made me find that movie, the Bill Gunn film starring Dwayne Jones. Because it was the only other film I could find. It was actually called Blood Couple when I found a copy of it on VHS. This was in mid-90s, I guess. Maybe it's late 90s, mid to late 90s. I found a VHS of it called Blood Couple. And that was a kind of heavily edited version that I believe had been shown along with The Exorcist. so they kind of re-edited that film and kind of shunned it out with The Exorcist and tried to get it seen like that because the studio didn't recoup much from it. The story of that's fantastic, though. Bill Gunn, they wanted him to do a kind of Blackula sequel. For black audiences in the States because blaxploitation was big at the time. And Bill Gunn just kind of ran with their budget and did whatever he wanted to and made this fantastic film. But that poster, Todd, I couldn't find a poster of it, Ganja and Hess, and they wanted us to put posters up so the students knew what films we were showing. So I got a local artist to design that for us. So he did a it's a print. It's not an original, but he drew it up, stenciled it, so it's kind of cartoonish. You can't really see it. There's that great shot of Dwayne Jones kind of fastening his coat when he walks away from the house where he's just killed the girl, and the shot of I can't remember her name now. Um, uh, the actress. I'm sorry, I can't remember the actress's name, but that's her when she's kind of that great shot, full on in the camera, split down the middle. So it shows those two images, and I got a local artist to kind of sketch it for us, and he printed it for us. It was great. So that was a. I wish it was an original. The rest of them are. All the stuff here is originals. I try to collect original memorabilia when I can, but unfortunately, the Gandra and Hess posters were so expensive. I mean, you're talking a couple of grand. So I got that one made up for us, but I did choose the images. But he was a local printer. Fantastic job, I think he did on it too. I really like that poster. It is great double feature with Martin Todd. That would be a fantastic kind of vampire night. That if this works out, that might be a good one to do together. Because I'm sure Gandra and Hess is here and Kurt online, and I know that somebody recently posted a black and white version of Martin up on YouTube. I think it was Lawrence de Vincent's, the guy who does all the kind of the work in Pittsburgh. For Romero, recently did a video I saw with Sean Clark where they were up on the rooftop where they shot Dawn of the Dead in Pittsburgh. But he's on Facebook and he does loads of great stuff. He did a fantastic locations video for the Crazies that I fell in love with. It was a great addition to the. I think it was when Arrow released the Crazies. They got him to do a kind of wonderful locations of the Crazies. It was fantastic. But yeah, Martin and Gandra and Hess, that would be a really good one to do good to a bill. But anyway, I guess let's get rolling if everybody's ready. So I've got night ready to go. Press play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shot at the road and that beautiful music. It's always amazing to me that it was all needle drop music. All the music in Night of the Living Dead was from Music Archives. He bought them from Needle Drop Archives and just used them so perfect. And if you do love cinema of the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, you can actually hear the music pop up quite often in a few Peter Lorre and Vincent Price films. They're just kind of in the background there. Romero was a master of editing, and he was also a master of editing sound. He was really good at stretching the sound, just kind of making it work. It does carry, that really sets the scene. Really sets the scene. And it was amazing that he kind of had this. I mean, Romero, this film was definitely a team effort. You know, you've got Carl, Marlon Eastman, who were in the film, in the couple with the kids. They did the makeup, you know, they provided the sound equipment for the film. And you've got Russ Striner and John Russo, who came up with the idea of the dead walking, you know, for Romero. Romero kind of said that he'd read Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, and he kind of wrote a short story based around that. And that short story treatment became the idea for Night of the Living Dead. So this is where I first came in. When I was a kid, this was the first image I ever saw. The cemetery entrance there, the car coming up that pan left to right. And already with that music, like you say, setting the scene, I knew I was in for something different. I mean, at that time, at that age, I still am a big action hero. You know, I've got the Rutger Hauer there in the background. You can see the Hitcher. Basquiat, I've got a sniper. You can't really see it, but I've got Tom Berenger's sniper up there in the corner. I'm a big action movie guy. And at that time, it was Terminator, RoboCop, you know, stuff like Red Scorpion, Van Damme had done Kickboxer. I was into Seagal already. Even at that age, you know, 5, 6, 7, I was bang into all that stuff. That's what I was watching. I wasn't really a cartoon guy. I did like the Hanna-Barbera cartoons in the morning, like Smurfs and Moomins and things like that. Beautiful. I just love that beginning when they slide in and start talking. Johnny and Barbara. So that's Studio D and Russ Strana. So Russ Strana is also one of the legendary producers of this film, and he's still going, still pumping out, still at the conventions. He's a bit of a legend. He still looks fantastic too. He's still got that long hair from the 60s. He's great. I've never seen him actually at any conventions. I'd love to see him. Um, I did get to shake Romero's hand once here when he was in England, and I think it was the early 2000s. It was a highlight of my life that when I was a young teenager. But the dialogue I love about this, it's so natural. It's not like I mean, it definitely has its foot firmly in gothic horror. I've always thought that. I mean, tell us if you disagree, because I really want to have a good chat about this. But I always thought this was gothic right from the beginning because of the graveyard setting. It almost kind of fools you into thinking it's going to be a normal horror movie. You know, the drive into this setting, they've got this music that you might have heard before if you're a movie fan because it's needle drop music. It's obviously modern. They're wearing late 60s clothes. Judy's got that cool, Barbara's got that beautiful hair. You know, Johnny's wearing that cool kind of 60s drain pipe type suit, you know. And this is kind of what I mean about organic, the movement there down through the trees onto them. But it's obviously contemporary, you know. And I mean, you've got to think around this time, late 50s, 60s, horror was really Roger Corman doing kind of the Edgar Allan Poe type deals, you know. And you had Mario Bava kind of doing the Whip and the Body early 60s. And what had Psycho, I guess, from Peep and Tom in 1960. We had lower budget things like Herschel Gordon Lewis, Blood Feast. But there's just something about this that makes it seem gothic and modern at the same time. And I still to this day, I love it. I love that about this. Carnival of Souls, yes, Kerry. That's another one of my all-time favorite movies. But the dialogue, I love it between Johnny and Barbara. It's almost melodrama. It's so normal. It's not like somebody saying, "Oh, it's spooky in here." They're just a couple of regular brother and sisters standing there talking in the graveyard, having a really regular type conversation. And it kind of, but you know something's not right. And that's kind of the mastery of this. I guess it's to do with the music we were talking about before, but now the gothic comes in, the horror, the thunder, you know? But what I love about this is getting to that really famous line, which will come soon. Beautiful, that lightning flash. Very gothic. And this is almost like Frankenstein, where we see the kind of lumbering beast in the background. I really like that. But he's almost a Frankenstein type monster. That's Bill Heinzman, right? Who directed another great zombie movie. I knew first as Zombie Nosh, but it's now more commonly known as Flesh Eater. I just bought a great Vinegar Syndrome release of Flesh Eater, which is fantastic to see that movie getting some joy and love from a film as big as Vinegar Syndrome. It was great. So Bill Heinzman did go on to do a few things too. Boy, you be damned to hell. I just love the conversation. It's kind of, you know, something's coming. Here it comes. I'll be quiet for a second. It's got to be one of the greatest, or at least one of the, or at least one of the most imitated lines. You know, it's got to be up there with Scarface. Say hello to my little friend. It really has. They're coming to get you, Barbara. But what I love about it is, I did a video on this not long ago for the channel for Boneyard Cinema, looking at the opening scene and just the kind of how iconic it is. Almost every shot, and I don't think I'm being too liberal about this. I think almost every shot in this lead sequence is iconic. Almost every shot. The gravestone, the monster coming up to grab Johnny, Johnny delivering the line. The fight here is head hitting the gravestone, which is coming up in a sec, which looks really painful still to this day. Oh, here it comes. But there's that cool setup as well with Johnny's driving gloves, which pays off in spades later. Oh, that nasty whack on the head. It still looks great to this day. I always wondered how they did that. I think Strana said they put a pad on the back of his head and he just went for it. But every shot's iconic. And that music kicking in again is bringing it back to the gothic because it's older music. But I still think it's a very modern film. But the shots do, to me, in this scene, they seem to unfold organically. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I taught film for a time. I still do, but not full time now. And we use this to kind of teach every shot is wrong. If you teach the kind of classic Hitchcock way of filmmaking, it does, doesn't it, Ian? It looks convincing, that whack on the head. It really does. And I'm pretty sure that he said it was just a pat on the back of his head and they went for it. Low budget as it gets. But it's like almost every shot here shouldn't work. The eye lines are off. The angles are off. It's not the kind of classic style of filmmaking we'll get to see with Hitchcock with the birds, where Tippi Hedren sits down and has a cigarette outside the school and you can hear the children singing. You've got the wide, you've got the medium shot, you've got the close-up, and then you go back out to medium, back to wide, telling you the story. She turns around, you see one bird. She looks, there's a whole jungle gym full of birds behind her. That's kind of the classic storytelling techniques of Hollywood. So this is all wrong. It shouldn't work. But it does. It works perfectly. And for me, it's because of Romero's editing. He's just fantastic at it. He really is. I remember I did a video about the Crazies too, because I'm a big Romero fan. And he said while doing the Crazies that what he did is he got as much coverage as possible. And he said this about a few films. I think he said this about Dawn too, if I remember rightly. And he just said that he got as much coverage as possible so that when he was in the editing room, he had total freedom. And you've got to respect that. I mean, it's not a situation I would like to be in, making films, because it would almost seem like you were unprepared. But Gornick and the team said Romero knew exactly what he wanted. So even though he was shooting a lot of coverage, he didn't do storyboards, he didn't do shot lists, but in his head, he knew exactly what he wanted. So when they were shooting later, Fast on Martin or Dawn of the Dead, he would say, okay, I want this, 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 and this. But he would know that he could edit them together and he had the freedom to do it. And I mean, I think a really good example of that is this sequence here. There's so much kinetic energy in it. And that's what I mean by organic. It seems to unfold organically. It's almost not the language of film. It's just what the pace he gets, the edit that he gives us. It's like, this is what you need to see. This is what we need to see to make this work. I mean, that run and slip around the corner is wonderful there. He doesn't linger too long on any shot. It's cut, 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 But in traditional film language, a lot of that shouldn't work. You do. That's a really good way of putting it, Kerry. You feel like you're running along with Barbara. You do. And see, I mean, all that was handheld, and bang, we're inside the house, locked off. And look at that beautiful lighting. This is 68. They couldn't afford to shoot in color. And this is kind of when you get on to the almost accident of how great Night of the Living Dead actually is. Because they could have put more money into it. I think they chucked in $600 each, 10 of them, to begin, to just get the ball rolling. And it ended up costing, I think it was like $135,000 or something, this film? I can't remember exactly. Maybe it's less, maybe $65,000. But the accident is that they couldn't afford to shoot color. So they shot black and white, and it makes it more iconic. Do you agree? Do you agree in the chat? I really do think it makes it more iconic. I mean, in the background there, just above my head, I know I'll keep pointing, but you can see there's a Night of the Living Dead there. It's a bit blurry. But that's the Hal Roach colorized version that I think it was Hal Roach Video. Might have been Forefront Video. Released it here in the UK. But I remember seeing that one. And that was the first copy that I owned that wasn't the ones I'd seen on television. And it just didn't work. It didn't work at all. Some films, I think, do work in color when they colorize them. Yeah, and then, John, you're right. It doesn't do it justice. The colorized version doesn't do it justice. I can see why they did it. Russo said in an interview they did it to try and finally make some money out of it because, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge now that Night of the Living Dead is public domain. It's one of the reasons why it's so easy to find online. But it was always public domain. The original title for the film was Night of the Flesh Eaters. And I can't remember who it was. It may have been Romero's father or one of the other guys' fathers did the artwork for it. This is in a documentary called Document of the Dead, I think this was in. And there was already a movie called Night of the Flesh Eaters. So they took that title off the release print, put Night of the Living Dead on it. That wonderful title with the kind of just the outline of night. It's a great looking title, but forgot to put the copyright bug on it. Nobody made a cent from Night of the Living Dead. But I guess you could say that's an accident of history because it did go into public domain. More people could show it without paying for it. More people saw it. And kind of similar to It's a Wonderful Life, the same thing happened with that movie. So in, I dig it. The black and white, part of what I like about it, yeah. But the black and white flicks from the same period, I dig are In Cold Blood, fantastic. The Honeymoon Killers as well, both wonderful films. Was Cold Blood Brooks? Was it Brooks? With the actor from In the Heat of the Night, and Robert Blake, right? That was a great movie. Truman Capote did the book. Yeah. Yeah, In Cold Blood's fantastic. And I think that's another one that's obviously benefited from the black and white because it almost feels like it's a historical document, maybe of some kind. It is a beautiful film. It is a beautiful film. But definitely, the colorized version didn't work. But I do have that poster for nostalgic reasons because it was $19. That's the VHS advert that I have there for the film. It was $19 to buy it on VHS in 1991. But I mean, I do have, just for nostalgic reasons, I did buy. There was a release of Legend films. I brought it up just to show everyone that they did in deadly color, and this was a pretty good series. They did all the Ed Wood films. I Am Legend. There was a few that did Carnival of Souls, which didn't work in color either at all. But it was interesting. But it was Hal Roach. It was just a way of trying to make money off the old prints, I think. But it didn't work. I totally agree with you all you out there in the Boneyard. It didn't work at all. It really didn't, the colorized version. But I do have a nostalgia for it, so I thought I would mention it. Similar to, does anyone remember the 30th anniversary edition where they shot the new footage? So John Russo, the co-creator of Night of the Living Dead, who I admire in his own right, he directed a movie called Midnight that I really like. I think it's a really good film, Midnight. It's a very low budget horror. But it's got an earworm of a song that gets into your head. It's like it was a good movie. I think that was early 80s. John Amplis pops up in there. It's Tom Savini did some of the special effects. I think he lent them one of the cleavers from Friday the 13th that he used. But Midnight's a great film. If you haven't seen it, by John Russo. Marionettes too. But he's a good filmmaker. Not great. He always stuck around the kind of low budget. He did a low budget kind of porn flick called Booby Hatch, which was okay. It was actually a pretty decent movie. Midnight was 81, Kerry. All right, thanks. And it does, yeah, you're right, Kerry. It does look really washed out in color. Ben is like, who let the white girl in? Yes. That's a really interesting thing. It is. I mean, the accident in history again. Romero said they wrote the character of Ben as a white truck driver. He was kind of for lack of a better term, he was a kind of tough redneck type character. The truck driver. Just a country guy, strong country character, your regular hero. And they cast Dwayne Jones because he was the best actor that they knew. And Romero said they thought they were kind of being hip and cool by not changing the dialogue. It was 1968. This was the new movement, the hippies. And they didn't change the dialogue, left it the way it was. And they kind of made this iconic hero in Ben. But an iconic African-American hero in Ben because... he said him and I think it was Strano were driving the work prints to the cities to try and sell them. And they heard on the radio that Martin Luther King had been assassinated, Dr. Martin Luther King. And they kind of looked at each other and said, do you think this would make a difference? And I think they kind of realized that it may have an effect on the film, and it kind of did. I mean, there's a great documentary. I can't remember the title now, but they interview Ernest Dickerson, the great cinematographer and great director who did a lot of The Walking Dead. He shot Do the Right Thing. He's a fantastic cinematographer. And he kind of said, it was surprising to see an African-American hero, even in 1968, if you can believe it. But to pick the right guy. Because like I say, I fell in love with Dwayne Jones, and that's why Gandra and Hess is there. I mean, Night of the Living Dead led me to Gandra and Hess. And Gandra and Hess is one of my favorite vampire movies. There's a remake, if anybody doesn't know, called The Sweet Blood of Jesus that Spike Jonze directed, which is a pretty good remake. Nowhere near as good as Bill's movie, but it's really good. Really beautifully shot digital, beautiful looking movie. But as we start to get into it, the action unfolds just so well. It really does. And he became a very competent action director, Romero. I mean, there's some scenes in Martin. This is John Russo here coming in. If anyone doesn't know, the co-writer, this zombie who gets the gets the whack in the head. But I think once he got to, as we were mentioning earlier, Creep Show and Day of the Dead, he's a fantastic action director. But he had to go through Night. He had to go through some of the car chases in Martin at the end. There's that car hit where Savini, that action's so quick, and it's all done in the cutting of it. And I think The Crazies is a great action film as well. I think it was one of the best training grounds for Romero, The Crazies. I really like how fast The Crazies is, how kinetic it is. He was cutting to music for the first time. So throughout the whole of The Crazies, I'll be quiet for a moment because here comes this most iconic shot. Whacks a zombie and bang, camera pulls back. See the moon. More zombies, man. Iconic as it comes. Such an iconic moment of cinema. That's where he says, "The know we're in here now." Beautiful. And now we'll kind of settle in. Now it's time to get cozy. All that crazy setup's over. Ben and Barbara are in the house. I like as we'll go back to it in the colorized version. The blood, the black and white, the shadows don't work at all. But in the black and white, it works perfectly. Even the fire. I heard a story from Romero as well talking about that. Just as Ben pulls the body outside to set fire to it. Does he set fire to the body? Or is it the chair? To try and scare them away. But the sound of the crickets, the cicadas in the background, they're just on the soundtrack. So they tried to record dialogue and sounds, but they were just always there and everything they recorded because they're out in this kind of country house with no power. There's some great stories about the film. There's a guy, Vince Stravinsky, who worked on it, who comes into the film at the end. He's actually the guy, spoiler alert, he's actually the guy that shoots our protagonist in the end. But he built them a bridge across a stream so that they could get all the equipment to the house that they were renting. The crew lived here. There was no running water at the house. There was a stream outside where they had to get kind of washed and get cups of coffee and stuff from, or water to boil, I should say, for cups of coffee. So this was a real labor of love for everybody involved. And I think one of the testaments of Night of the Living Dead is that the whole community got involved in this. I mean, when we start to get towards the rest of it, you get like police wagons and the local television station, Bill Chili Cardell, who is Laurie Cardell's father from Day of the Dead, came along because he was the local TV host and he played Night of the Living Dead on Chiller Theater in Pittsburgh. It was a real big community thing, and there's something really wonderful about that, about Night of the Living Dead, I think. That the whole kind of town were behind it almost. And I know that Romero did move to Hollywood later. He did. And he did The Dark Half and Monkey Shines. But he also shot some of those in Pittsburgh, parts of them. But then he moved up to Canada to shoot Bruiser, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead. But he was a regional filmmaker throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's one of the really interesting things about it. Hi, Vice Versa. Thanks for joining us. After Night of the Living Dead, Romero made a romantic flick called The Affair, which is really rare. It's one of his non-horror movies besides Night Riders. Yeah, so The Affair's got a couple of titles. It was There's Always Vanilla as well. It's a really interesting one. It was for a long time. I was just talking about this earlier on, Vice. It was really hard to get, mega hard to get, before there was an Anchor Bay release of Season of the Witch, and they put There's Always Vanilla on there as a special feature. Believe it or not, it was that obscure and rare. That movie was a special feature on this Anchor Bay release in the UK and the States. I think it was the States Region 1 first, and then they released it over here in the UK. But I had a video of that, which was torn to pieces. It was terrible quality. I didn't see that in decent quality. So you're right, terribly rare. I didn't see that on decent quality until that Region 1 DVD release. And I'm pretty sure that was from Anchor Bay that had that on there, but it was crazy rare. But you've got some kind of relationships in Night of the Living Dead in there. The main actress in The Affair is, she's in the basement at the moment, but we'll see her later on. So she pops up in this. But I actually quite like The Affair, or There's Always Vanilla. But I know that Romero hates it That was I saw probably on that same Anchor Bay release. There was an interview which I've actually clipped for some of the videos I've made about Romero here on the channel, where he's kind of he doesn't like There's Always Vanilla. He says he thinks it's his worst movie. It didn't work out. They had a kind of those narration pieces in it. They had to write narration to fit around it. And he says he thinks it's his worst work and he doesn't like to think about it. But I disagree. I think it's a good little movie. I think you've got that kind of you can tell there's some kind of Graduate influence there. Do you think, Vice? Might be influenced by The Graduate or Goodbye Columbus. It's got that kind of feel, that kind of 60s rom-com feel. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I like it. I think at that time, Season of the Witch is great, and I love Crazies. I'd put Crazies up there in my favorite Romero movies. But he didn't even like Season of the Witch that much. He said he was still learning when he was making those movies. And he was kind of learning on the job, which is one of the reasons why I talk about Night of the Living Dead being a happy accident or the accident of history. Because to me, still to this day, watching it now, there's nothing I fault about it. I mean, that's totally looking through nostalgic glasses because I told the story at the beginning of the stream. I grew up with this movie. It was a film I saw very early on, studied it, taught it years later. But I can't fault it. I just think it's perfect. And I think it was just pure passion, a kind of driven attitude of the 60s that we can do this. We don't have to be in Hollywood. You know, the kind of Cronenberg said a great quote about this. That Night of the Living Dead kind of influenced everybody because Romero made all of us think, well, we could pick up a camera and do that too because he did. And I love that kind of cool 60s mentality about this. And I love that too, Vice, about There's Always Vanilla or the Affair and the Crazies and Season of the Witch or Jack's Wife. I really do love that about those films. I think there's scenes in Jack's Wife, there's a scene where she ages in the mirror. And it's almost like he's watched the old Wolfman movies to do it. I think it's beautifully done. But Romero, always the kind of humble guy, really put those movies down a lot. And I don't think he should have as much. I really don't think, because I really like them. I do. But I think out of those movies, I do love The Crazies. I think The Crazies is kind of a slow burner masterwork of 70s kind of apocalyptic cinema. But I think Night of the Living Dead is his greatest film of those earlier ones, if not one of his greatest films. What do you all think? I mean, I know we've discussed Day of the Dead. I think Day of the Dead's his best film as director. But if you guys had to pick one, is there anything you'd be interested in or one film that you think is Romero's greatest? It was interesting, this story. I wanted to bring this up. So this really shows Dwayne Jones' acting, I think, his skill here, and why Romero cast him, because he's a fantastic actor. But there was a film that I think got a bad rep, which is this one here, Night of the Animated Dead. And a lot of Romero fans hated this. I bought this. This must have been 2021. So recently, it was kind of slipped from HMV. But I really liked the atmosphere of this. I thought it was a good film. You know, they'd done the Reanimated Dead before this, which I didn't like very much when different stop motion artists got together. But with this one, I really liked the atmosphere of it, although the animation was very bare bones. And a lot of people complained about it, but one of the cool things about this was, I thought, almost like the director being a fan, he animated the Beekman's Diner. So we saw what happened to Beekman's. Beautiful. Sorry, I was just listening to that little bit of dialogue there. I really love Dwayne Jones' performance in this scene. But if it's worth a watch, I mean, has anyone seen it? What do you think? But I thought that film got unfairly kind of blasted. I really liked Night of the Animated Dead. I thought it had a really cool atmosphere to it. They didn't go too bombastic with it. It was minimal music. They'd used pretty much the same dialogue from the movie. There was a few scenes that were changed, but I thought it was pretty good. And I liked the fact that we finally got to see Beekman's. Now, there was I mentioned this earlier. So very, very, a very long time ago, I bought this in Sainsbury's, the Anchor Bay collection. So you got Night, Dawn, and Day. This was before Land and Diary and Survival existed. This was 2002 from Anchor Bay. And there was a disc in this, the 30th anniversary edition of Night of the Living Dead, remastered from the original 35mm, with 15 minutes of new footage. And boy, oh boy, was that footage bad. It was terrible. John Russo had gone back and, I guess, in an attempt to try and make some money again from the film, which you can't blame him for. He co-wrote the original and made no money from it. But it was so shoehorned in, and the acting was so bad. I mean, they were amateur actors. And just didn't work at all, the 30th anniversary edition. They did a 3-disc edition. I think it was when they did the Millennium release of Night of the Living Dead as well. They did a 30th anniversary, and you got the soundtrack. So there was a new composed soundtrack to the 30th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. And, oh man, it just sucked. It really did. It didn't work at all for the film. They didn't mix the elements together right. But that was that was the first one I had. I think on DVD, on digital versatile disc, that was the first Night of the Living Dead I owned on DVD, and I couldn't believe it when I popped it in, and it was all these kind of shoehorned in extra bits that John Russo had shot and added on. But like I say, you can't blame him, and I think for any Night of the Living Dead completists, it's worth a watch. It's a cringe watch, but it's worth a watch. It is. The new music's kind of piano, M audio, like a keyboard like mine, just kind of hammered in there. Prism Leisure, Kerry. Your first one was Prism Leisure. Awesome. I remember the Prism Leisure ones. There was, everybody released it on VHS and DVD. There was so many releases. The Prism Leisure releases I remember the most were Cronenberg's Shivers and Rabid, because they packed them with special features. I remember they were great releases, those two. But yeah, Prism Leisure. There was a good one from Millennium, which I did bring to mention. I don't want to make this a physical media video, but I brought them up so we had stuff to talk about. But this was my favorite release on DVD because they remastered it, and still the sound hasn't quite been as good as they nailed it on this disc. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. This was from Millennium release, and it was a fantastic release, this. And that was my favorite DVD release of Night. And I had to get this Region 1 from the States, but I thought it was Region 1, I should say, because when it arrived, it was multi-region. But it was a great release, this one, Night of the Living Dead. I still watch it every now and again. I did buy the 4K and the Criterion Blu-ray from the 4K transfer. And but I tend to gravitate towards the Millennium Edition whenever I want to watch it on home media. I mean, what do you guys do? Do you prefer to watch the DVDs? Some people prefer the VHSs. But does anyone own the 4K? I thought the 4K looked too clean. And I know that's something that's might sound a bit strange, seeing that the image is too clean, but I love the grittiness of the original. I mean, for anyone who's watching the Cult Cinema Classics one along with this stream, that little bit of blurriness, that little bit of grain, that little bit of shine that's still on there, there's something about it that makes the film feel alive to me. I really like that. DVD, Night and Dawn Blu-ray, right, Kerry? Yeah, the Fremantle release was, that was very clean. Speaking of clean releases, the Fremantle one was good. I actually like Fremantle. They're a UK. They've released a lot of stuff in the UK. And Fremantle, after Anchor Bay, they kind of remastered the sound a lot better, I found. I mean, I do love Anchor Bay, and they'll always hold a place in my heart because they were the first people I remember releasing stuff like that. You also had Vipco, who were a video label and then started doing those kind of cut-down cheap DVDs. But Day and Dawn, sorry. All right. Night and Dawn Blu-ray, yeah. So DVD for Night, and then Day and Dawn on Blu-ray. I do love the Arrow Blu-ray releases of Dawn. They're the ones I kind of go to when I want to watch Dawn. The Arrow releases. The Day release, I really did like the Scream Factory, but I also did buy the Arrow release of Day, which I really like. Hey, the Leechling, thanks for joining us. And then Bob Clark and Alan Ormsby did their 2 Night of the Living Dead inspired films, Death Dream and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. I love Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. I love it. I also love Death Dream. If you're interested, I did a video about Death Dream here on the channel. I love those movies. I'm a big Bob Clark fan. I mean, Black Christmas is legendary. Carpenter spoke about that being an influence on Halloween, as well as, obviously the other stuff. But Bob Clark's great. Alan Ormsby too, great writer, fantastic writer. I love that kind of children shouldn't play with dead things. How it just takes that kind of left turn. It's almost like a comedy. Well, it is a comedy, and then it takes that left turn and turns really dark when they all come out the grave. And there's that magical moment, pardon me, on the staircase where the main character, played by Ormsby, I believe, kind of throws his girlfriend towards the zombies. And they all kind of grab her and look up at him and say, "What?" As if to say, "You've just thrown out your girlfriend, you bugger." I love that. Yeah, great films. Great. Thanks for joining us. Fremantle is the new name for Grundy, isn't it? They do all the Prisoner and Neighbours DVDs. Yes, they do. So they're based in the UK, Perry, as far as I believe. I used to work with a cinematographer who worked with them for a while, doing packages and electronic press kits for their films. So I think they're based here in the UK. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing a lot of television or releasing foreign releases here in the UK. But yeah, Fremantle, they've got that kind of really dun 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 weird sound that sounds pixelated almost on their menu, I think, if I remember rightly. But yeah, great to see Bob Clark and Alan Ormsby getting a mention. There was, I did want to get into this because Night of the Living Dead was my beginning of the whole zombie odyssey. I became a zombie freak when I was a teenager. I mean, I watched everything zombie I could get my hands on, and it all came from Night of the Living Dead. I was watching King of the Zombies. I watched the Great Plague of the Zombies, the UK film. I Walked with a Zombie, Jacques Tourneur, which is a beautiful looking film. But those were the kind of zombies that were, I guess Romero kind of reinvented the zombie with Night of the Living Dead, or I don't guess he did reinvent the zombie with Night of the Living Dead. And one of his lines was, they were always the guys who were doing Lugosi's wet work, the zombies. And he thought, well, maybe I could take that character and do something else with it. And he did, and he created these. But it was, I wouldn't have seen those films, Death Dream and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, if it hadn't been for me seeing Night of the Living Dead. And then very, very shortly after, somebody recommended me Shivers, which was in a magazine, I believe. Kind of, if you like Night of the Living Dead, you'll like this, which isn't zombies, but it's kind of the same kind of people, infected people, kind of fighting people, or parasite infected people. And then I got into Fulci's films, The Beyond, City of the Living Dead, and another one of my favorites of all time, Zombie Flesh Eaters, which was kind of as sold as the sequel to Dawn of the Dead, so they called it Zombie 2 over in Italy. And that was to do with, I guess, Argento produced Dawn of the Dead along with Romero. He paid Romero to write the screenplay for Dawn. He actually put Christine Forrest Romero and Romero, when they were married, up in a flat in Rome and gave him 2 weeks or so to write the screenplay. So Argento, we've got to thank a lot for Dawn of the Dead. And then, of course, they made Two Evil Eyes together in the early 90s with that great cameo from Tom Savini. But yeah, I Walked with a Zombie, Perry. Beautiful film. It's a very, Jacques Tourneur is a fantastic director. Had a lot to do with Cat People, the original one with Val Lewton. His films are beautiful looking. But yeah, it was Night of the Living Dead that got me into zombie movies. It really was. And I wouldn't have seen those Alan Ormsby ones at the time. Speaking about bad VHSs, the first time I saw Death Dream and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, they were terrible VHS transfers. I mean, there was kind of a trading market where we had to kind of go to get these things because you couldn't get them at a video store. So it was all secondhand markets. I mean, there was only one video shop where I grew up. There was also a news agents that used to sell me videos as well. He sold me stuff like I just mentioned briefly Suburban Commando on the channel, which was a Hulk Hogan movie. And I know that I didn't agree with Hogan's politics, but Suburban Commando was a big VHS in the early days. I loved that film. And the local VHS shop owner actually sold me Suburban Commando with my pocket money. It was kind of a pocket money buy. I remember back in the day then as well, getting a little bit older, there was loads of people kind of forget how hard some of these movies were to get in the day. I met someone recently who loved Carnival of Souls. Speaking of that, Kerry, I know you mentioned it in the chat, which has always been one of my favorite films, but you'd be surprised. That was difficult to get at one point. It was on television sometimes, But that was pretty hard to find, and people were copying copies for each other. Same with Eraserhead. That was pretty difficult to find until I think that was Forefront again, actually. Put that out here in England with that beautiful kind of green Eraserhead cover, the VHS cover. But we used to have kind of trading markets for VHS, and that's how I saw a lot of these films. But Night of the Living Dead inspired me to get into Fulci, The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, which I absolutely love. Fantastic zombie film. But it began like this kind of zombie odyssey for me, and I started watching all the zombie movies that I could get my hands on, and that was because of Night of the Living Dead. Oh, Tombs of the Blind Dead, yes. Great, yes. Yeah, man, that was a really good one, Tombs of the Blind Dead. There's a whole series, right? Was I right? There was 3 Tombs of the Blind Dead? I think I've only seen 3. If there is more, I don't think I've seen them. But I love the one that was kind of the pirates on the ship. I thought that was awesome, that Tombs of the Blind Dead. But the first Tombs of the Blind Dead was a very, very good zombie movie. The zombies were kind of scary in that. There was it Templars they were? I can't remember. But it was Templars or something, right? The Tombs of the Blind Dead? Ghost Galleon, that's right, Kerry, the Ghost Galleon. Spanish horror, yes. The Franco era, yep. Templars. It was Templars. Yeah, but I did love that one. But there's so many cool zombie movies that this kind of Night of the Living Dead inspired, I think. I mean, there was I had a big soft spot for Zombie Holocaust. I really liked Zombie Holocaust. Pardon me, sorry. But yeah, Zombie Holocaust was a great film. I really liked that one. It was kind of gnarly. The effects, I mean, like I said, this was back in the day of VHS, so that the effects looked really gnarly. And at that time, I was like, I was gnarly, gnarly, dude. That's like what I was like back then. So I really enjoyed them. Would have a few spliffs, I'll have a few drinks, and watch the movies. And I still do stick it on every now and again. I've never upgraded that to Blu-ray or anything, but I still do have a VHS of that, which I've stuck on every now and again. Zombie Holocaust. And there was a Cannibal Apocalypse as well with John Saxon. And I don't think I would have seen that if I hadn't seen Night of the Living Dead. That was another one I kind of found asking people, other VHS guys, what do you like if you like Night, or what do you like if you like Tombs, or what do you like if you like Living Dead at Manchester Morgue? We kind of recommend films to each other. And that was an excellent one, I thought. It's worth watching, the Leitrim. It is. The amusement park. I bought there was a release of that not long ago, a French release first. I bought the French release. And then there was another label whose name escapes me now, an English label, released that, and I bought that one afterwards. But the French one was a better release, and I think it was cheaper, if I remember. That you get a booklet with it, which is in French, but I translated some of the stuff online. But it's definitely worth watching. I would recommend it. It's got I can't remember the actor's name now. It escapes us, but he played the Papa in Martin, who owned the store. The kind of, I guess you call him the Van Helsing type character in Martin. I wish I could remember the actor's name, but it escapes me now. But he played the kind of patriarch of the family, the one who called Martin Nosferatu. So he's the main character in the amusement park, and I would recommend it. I won't say any spoilers, but it's definitely got a Romero feel. It does feel low budget. It does feel a little bit rushed. It's a lot of handheld stuff. I'd say more handheld than Night. It was obviously done very fast, but it was beautiful to see it, and I'm really glad they released it. I would definitely recommend it. It's definitely worth a watch. But like I say, you might be able to get that French release cheaper, and I think that was a bit of a better print than the one they released here in the UK. Ah, cool, man. Back to Night. We've got the guys from downstairs now, Carl and Marilyn Eastman there, and the young couple. I love Carl Hardman. It amazes me that he was a non-actor and he was just doing this because he wanted to. I love his performance in this film. Look at those eyes. He's great. The bugger of it is that he's right. I love that about this movie. Ah, there you go. Lincoln Mazel. Right. Thank you, Kerry. Yeah. Yeah, that was him. He's fantastic in the amusement park as well. I need to check something, actually. Give us 2 seconds. The actor who is playing the young guy, he was a local singer, right? If I'm right in remembering that. I think that was... So he was on college radio and stuff at the time. So it was a bit of a coup for them to get the actor. Give me 2 seconds. Keith Wayne, yeah. So Keith Wayne was a local singer. I just had to check that, sorry. but yeah, so he was a bit of a coup for them to get him for the film. The same as Chili Billy Cardell. They got a couple of names in this, but everybody was behind it. And I think he went on. A lot of the people went on to, like I say, Colin Marl Eastman. They went on to some success doing industrial films and things. So everybody involved was involved in movies at the time. It's kind of a just a brilliant band of people and passionate people who wanted to make something that worked, and they really did. And it really stands the test of time. I mean, there's that remake that Savini directed, which I brought up for us to look at. So Night of the Living Dead 1990, which Romero wrote the screenplay for. And I believe this was again Striner and Russo and the guys trying to kind of finally make some more cash, you know? So, okay, so can we make some money off the name? So let's remake it and let's do it as Night of the Living Dead 90. And Savini was obviously collaborated with Romero, and they're very good friends, and I believe they remained very good friends. And so that was another attempt to try and make some money, and I really liked that remake. I think it's one of the better remakes. I don't I don't think they ever ate people before night. Always wondered who played the sheriff in that flick. Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think zombies ever ate anybody before Night of the Living Dead. They were always kind of voodoo Haitian people, the voodoo or Haitian zombies, kind of like for revenge. The kind of steal your girlfriend and drag her off into the night like I walked with a zombie. Or they were, or like I say, Romero said they were kind of doing Lugosi's wet work. I don't think they ever bit anybody. You're definitely right there, I think. But he just made them into the enemy next door, and there's something to be said about that. The same with Martin. He kind of made, pardon me again, he kind of made Dracula the kid next door. And I guess he did that with the zombies too. He made the threat that house next door. It's not some Transylvanian hill. It's the guy in Steeltown, Pennsylvania with Martin. Or in Night of the Living Dead, it's not the monsters under your bed, or it's not Dracula. It's that guy in the house next door who's going to come and try and eat you. Something really cool about that. And I mean, there's a lot of. I remember talking to one of my friends about this, Glenn, over on Cynical Celluloid on the channel, and we often talk about Romero because we're both fans. And I remember Glenn saying that he made a really interesting point that Night of the Living Dead is almost become more and more analyzed as history's gone on. So people project their own meanings onto it. And I remember me and Glenn talking about it, and we kind of came to the conclusion that even Romero is perhaps projecting stuff onto it that wasn't there in the beginning. He picked up a camera, he made this movie, but I guess time changes everything. And because of the time it was made in 68 and the politics of the time, things kind of got impressed upon the movie. And I thought that was a really cool thing that Glenn kind of said. Even now, Romero's kind of saying there was probably things in there that I didn't realize I was doing at the time. Because it's the accident of history. It's being at that time, at that place, and making that movie. I mean, it's crazy to think that when he went on to do Land of the Dead, he cast Dennis Hopper. And Easy Rider came out the same year. Easy Rider was an American countercultural film that one of the most important, I guess, countercultural American films, along with Night. And they were both kind of the accident of history that those movies got so popular. There were just people making films about their time and their place. Easy Rider contains the music of the time, the drugs of the time, the teenagers of the time, paraphernalia of the time. They were just making a movie about their time and their place. And I think Romero did the same kind of thing. And I remember them getting interviewed about that together for Land. And I remember Hopper saying, well, we made our movies at the same time. And that's kind of a great nod of approval to Romero coming from someone like Hopper, saying, we made our mark at the same time in history. And I think that's great about these films. They are a part of history, but they're also very modern at the same time, because those themes will always be a concern of society. Society eating itself. And I mean, that's obviously me projecting what I think on a night, but it's almost society eating itself. Easy Rider, the same thing. Society's killing itself. The two motorbike riders get killed in the end. just randomly by random strangers. It's kind of about society eating itself. That might be a bit deep, but I always kind of thought that might have been what the zombie thing was, society eating itself. Ian, cool. I don't think oh, sorry, yeah, we've already mentioned that. Yeah, so I think that would be my opinion on that, Ian. I think it was. I think it might be society eating itself. What do you think? I don't know. Yeah, so here we go. Judith Ridley. So she stars in the film we mentioned earlier, The Affair, which is as always vanilla. She was a little bit older in that one. Great actress, and she never really acted much again. You know, a lot of these people didn't in Romero's works. Obviously, I was saying Keith before had a kind of uh, relatively successful pop career on radio, college radio, and things. I know that Judith O'Dea does a lot of conventions now. I'm sorry to say I never met Judith O'Dea either. I'd love to have met her. Hopefully, she might come to the UK and do a convention soon. But it's, I think everybody kind of benefited from it a little bit, this film. I mean, if not in the long run, you've got Harrison and the guys at Laurel benefited from, sorry, not Harrison, Strana, Russo, and Romero kind of benefited from this in the long run because it got well known, because it got shown everywhere, and that kind of gave them careers. But it was Russo said and Romero said it was quite hard to get budgets for any amount of time after this. Russo found it harder because I don't think he had quite the vision that Romero had. But Russo did manage to get some funding to make a few films. But he wrote some books as well on the occult, witchcraft, werewolves, that kind of thing. He wrote a novelization, Return of the Living Dead, which is a pretty good book. But and I think he sold the rights to that to be made into Return of the Living Dead. There's a kind of story floating around, but I don't know how true it is. Russo said, and he is one to tell stories, he's a filmmaker, but he said that at one point, Frank Sinatra was involved in producing a film version of Return of the Living Dead, and he was willing to put like $1 million into it. But that fell through. The studio did keep the name, and that's where Dan O'Bannon's Return of the Living Dead came from, which is getting a release soon from, I think it's Arrow here in the UK, getting an Arrow release. I always thought that was an interesting story because Romero and Russo, when they split up, they even split the name. So Russo got to keep the Living Dead part of the name, and that's how I ended up writing the script. And the book, sorry, the novel, and then try to sell it as a script. But Romero was making films like There's Always Vanilla, like Season of the Witch, like The Crazies for $65,000, $75,000. They were not very expensive films. And I know that the producer on The Crazies did an interview just before his death, and he said that film did not make any money at all. But what it did do was, and this is kind of the accent to history and why I love Romero so much, because he kept trying and kept trying and kept going. He made The Crazies, didn't make any money back for him or the producers. Huge production, you know, soldiers, suits, infected people running around. I think it's a great film, The Crazies. But there was a screening of The Crazies. Richard P. Rubinstein was there. The producer, a young producer at the time, very young, said, let's do something together. And that's what happened. Martin came from that. Martin really helped in getting funding and being seen. And then the relationship with Rubinstein and Romero led on to Dawn of the Dead, and that really launched their careers. But I love the passion of Romero, the fact that he kept trying and trying and trying. And he did it. He's a testament to independent filmmakers. I really love that about him. What's that, Carrie? I think with the ending of the Hays Code, the new Hollywood helped make films like Easy Rider and Night Possible. I also think, for an obscure reference, but I think Alphaville by Goddard helped as well. That's an interesting one. Alphaville, that's actually my favorite Goddard film. It's weird that my favorite one would be this crazy sci-fi, but I guess that's what I'm into. I did like The Weekend, and Goddard made some pretty cool movies. But I always kind of preferred Truffaut. I loved Fahrenheit 451. I thought that was a magnificent film. I wasn't a big fan of the 400 Blows, but I did love Jules and Jim. But 451 was just one of those movies. It was on, can you remember Movie Drome, anyone? Alex Cox, Mark Cousins, Mark Kermode. I think it was Channel 2 here in the UK. There was one night Alex Cox showed Fahrenheit 451, and it blew me away. And that was my kind of introduction to Truffaut. So I always loved that one. But Alphaville is my favorite Godard too. It's a great one. The Wild Bunch and Bonnie and Clyde are other flicks from that same era that I mentioned a lot here. Yeah, they do. The Wild Bunch was Sam Peckinpah, and it was kind of after Hitchcock. Peckinpah was the first director that I collected. So I'm a big Peckinpah fan, and the Wild Bunch was just so different because it wasn't obviously we had great westerns. We had the great era of westerns. We had the Searchers by Ford. We had Red River by Hawks. We had these great westerns. But with the Wild Bunch, it was bloodshed for real. He was showing you the pain and the slow motion of death. It was extending the moment. It was showing you the real pain of it. And I think that's what's great about Wild Bunch. And Bonnie and Clyde was the beginning of independent cinema. That was Arthur Penn. Warren Beatty, off his own back, actually helped produce that film. A very young Warren Beatty. And that is the beginning of independent cinema. I to this day, from my learning, Bonnie and Clyde is one of the first successful independent works of cinema ever made by Arthur Penn. And that was kind of how we ended up getting Easy Rider. But great film, yep. He was Kerry. Truffaut is a fantastic. He is a fantastic director. He is. He was. I mean, I love Agnes Varda from the kind of French New Wave, but she's my favorite. But Truffaut was great, and like I say, that 451 was the one for me. It's just the color, everything's wonderful in it. It is. Yep, you're right. Bonnie and Clyde still does hit very hard today. Davey Dread, thanks for joining the stream. George Romero created brilliant zombie movies. Stay scared. I love that. I loved it how he signed everything. Stay scared. I'm gonna have to crack open the next beer. Yeah. Varda was always my favorite. The Vagabond's great. She did some wonderful films, Varda. But it was I mean, at the time, I'm not sure how much Romero was inspired by that kind of stuff. I know that a lot of the guys were. I'm a big Paul Schrader fan, and I know that Schrader was massively influenced by the New Wave and all those guys. Same with Scorsese. If you watch Scorsese's film that can't remember now, the first one he did with Keitel was like, "Who's that knocking at the door?" or "There's someone at the door." It's really far out. It's like or you look at someone like Toby Hooper doing Eggshells before he did with Kim Henkel. Before they did Chainsaw Massacre, that's like a far out, psychedelic horror movie, which is pretty cool, And I love that about them, that it was kind of that whole generation of guys that were just willing to do it. And so I think French New Wave definitely did inspire them all. I know that Cronenberg, we were discussing this recently, me and Kerry, on Kerry's channel is Cinema Conversations. For anyone that's interested in checking it out, we've done 2 discussions so far on Stephen King adaptations and David Cronenberg. But Cronenberg kind of said that it was Fellini and the kind of new wave movement that got him into films as well, or kind of art house flicks. There's something so cool about this in night. The fact that they're listening to the radio and they're watching the TV in the house that made it seem so widespread. And this is one of the main memories I have from watching it at that young age, is that it felt like the whole world was in peril. It didn't just feel like it was Ben and Barbara and the Coopers in the house. It felt like the whole world was in peril somehow when I was watching it at that young age. And I mean, it was kind of it's almost, I mean, this is in retrospect now, just thinking about this right now. I'm a big found footage horror fan. And I love the fact that Romero kind of makes it seem so real because he's got the news anchor on the television telling you that things are going wrong. I remember hearing David Bowie, 5 years, and he says the guy on the radio or the guy on the telly's telling us we've got 5 years left to die in. And thinking, I wonder if he watched Night of the Living Dead, and he's talking about the news reporter telling everyone you better be careful, better lock up the doors. Hey, McVicker. Cool name. Roger Daltrey, if I'm not mistaken. John Cassavetes' early films, also, yes, definitely. 100% McVicker. I love Shadows, which is kind of that bebop one he did, jazz one in the 50s. And later on, he did I saw this, there was a Pedro Almodovar movie called, I think it was All About My Mother. It was 90s, I think. And I'd seen a few Cassavetes films, and I liked them. But I saw Almodovar get interviewed, and he'd said there's a film called Opening Night that influenced All About My Mother. And I was like, oh, I'll have to dig that one out. And this was VHS days again, I think. So I went down the video store, tried to find it, couldn't find it. I ended up asking the VHS guys that I kind of traded with. Somebody got it for us. Made me fall in love with Cassavetes. Opening Night's my favorite one. That one in is it Woman Under the Influence with Peter Falk? Incredible. Yeah, but Shadows was very influential, I think, in the 50s because Cassavetes just kind of did what Romero did. He just picked it up and went for it, man. But he was also a kind of, he had the money to do it, Cassavetes, so he was self-funding his own films off his acting career. And he was a very good actor. Obviously, we know Cassavetes from some great movies. But I think he was using his acting money to fund them, and he did it all off his own back. So he was obviously instrumental in independent cinema. But Opening Night was the one. I loved it, fell in love with it. And Almodovar said he kind of took the inspiration from All About Mother. You know, the opening when she walks away and the car hits her off in the distance. I think, if I remember rightly, this is all from years ago. But I did love that movie. I did. Opening Night's a masterpiece. So is Shadows in its own way. It's very, I guess, could you say avant-garde in the 50s? Was that a thing? But it's jerky, handheld. You're in the moment. Definitely, Cassavetes had an influence on it. He was, and I know Opening Night, and especially A Woman Under the Influence, they've definitely influenced my filmmaking. I made a film called Things That Happen, and that was hugely influenced by Opening Night. This kind of Roman Cameron. He did a film called Husbands as well with Ben Gazzara and Peter Falk, who him and Falk were friends. Columbo, Peter Falk. And that film is just marvelous, the way it follows them around town. And he had a great, I think he had a great independent heart, Cassavetes. And I think a lot of people respect him. Another one of my favorites is Abel Ferrara. He's getting a release soon. Miss 45 is being released on Blu-ray from Arrow here in the UK. About time I got a good one because it's a magnificent film. But he loved Cassavetes, and that's another one of the reasons I kind of got into him, because Ferrara was always talking about him too. But yes, he's to all those guys. He's to Romero, Cassavetes, Ferrara. He's to Truffaut, to Vada. Great, And I really do class Romero as being in with those. He was an inspiration to me. He still is. Because he did it. He wasn't one of those people who spoke about it. He went and did it. And that's so cool. Yeah, man, I forgot. Yes, of course. Cassavetes, Kerry, decent actor too. Great in Guy Woodhouse and Rosemary's Baby. I totally forgot. Yeah, he plays the husband, doesn't he? The actor who gets a career from selling his baby to the to the devil. I forgot about that. Yeah, he was in so many great things. I mean, speaking of him and Falk being friends, he's in one of the best episodes of Columbo. Cassavetes is great. Him and Falk did a film called Mickey and Nicky, or Mikey and Nicky. I can never remember the pronunciation. Written and directed by Elaine May, who was Mike Nichols' partner. Fantastic. Great film. Just them two kind of on the streets in New York. Fantastic. But I mean, they're all kind of heroes, these guys, of independent cinema, I think. And Romero's up there. He's definitely up there with them. Getting back tonight, I guess. Had a bit of a tangent there about independent filmmakers. But all this stuff's just fantastic. I mean, this has obviously influenced Russo, right? In Return of the Living Dead, they've got the cadaver, the arms and legs have been removed, the trunk's moving, the spinal fluid comes out. It says, we need to eat brains, because it heals the pain. He was visualizing what was written in the script here in Night. Pardon? Oh, it's so sad, man. Karen Cooper was... Man, it's the end of the world for these people. And I really feel like that. When I watch these movies, I do. Romero's not a guy for happy endings. He never was. And I always kind of admire that too, about Romero's films. Ben being the boss. Yes, Gary. But he was never concerned about mainstream. I mean, there was, I'm pretty sure it was Night, when there was a distributor who was interested in it, and he told the story where it said, yeah, we're interested in making it, but Ben can't die in the end. You can't kill the hero. And he kind of said, well, no, the hero dies in the end. That's the whole point. And they were like, "Well, no, that doesn't happen." And he said, "Well, I'm not selling it to you then." And this is a first film. If that was my first film, because I don't have the conviction and passion of Romero, I probably would have said, "Okay, then, if you think that's right." But he didn't. Romero said, "No, I'm going to stick to my guns. The main character has to die in the end." You know, he was influenced by I think it was the DC comics or the EC comics. He talked about reading when he was a kid. That's why him and Stephen King got on so well, because they kind of loved those DC comics that they'd read when they were children. Is it EC or DC? It's EC, right? The EC comics. It's the correct us if I'm wrong, everyone. EC, I think. Yep, Kerry. Yep. But it's the Tales from the Crypt kind of, where there's a message to the story. It might be horrific. You know, the head of somebody might end up on the hood of somebody's car at the end of the comic, but there's a message that guy was bad. The guy whose head ends up on the hood of the car. And the message from this is to get deep into it. Ben's wrong, man. He ends up going down into the cellar at the end. He's wrong. And Ben doesn't like Carl Hardman, Cooper, Harry Cooper, as much as Harry Cooper doesn't like Ben. If the two of them had just kind of gotten along, everything would have been fine. Well, at least I think everything would have been fine. But I think in Romero's world, that's what he's saying. If these people had managed to get along, everything might have been okay. It's a very kind of hippie mentality, I think, that runs through all of Romero's films. I mean, going back to Season of the Witch. Creepshow is the first flick of Romero's to get a major distributor. Yeah, Warner Brothers it was. There's a great interview, I think it's on the 2-disc edition of Creepshow, where the Pascal Buber, the editor, says it blew us all away to see the Warner Brothers logo on a film that we'd all worked on, because they've been working together, since the beginning. All these guys, trying to make these films, and he says it blew us away to see the Warner Brothers logo on the top. That was he got a deal with Salah Hassanein at United Film Distribution, and Salah Hassanein put money into Creepshow, Night Riders, and Day of the Dead. And Hassanein had said, "I'll give you money to make 3 films, and we'll distribute them, or try to find distribution for them, if you at least do a sequel to the Night, Dawn, and Day. So do the third part of the trilogy." And that's where Day came from, the deal with Salah Hassanein. But it was an amazing deal. I mentioned earlier, I think Creepshow and Day of the Dead are just 2 fantastically directed films. It still blows my mind today when you look at how good Creepshow is. It's a beautiful looking movie. I mean, you look at the performances and the actors you got in there. You got Ted Danson, you got Galen Ross, Leslie Nielsen, you got Ed Harris in a very early performance in there. Fantastic. Yeah, that's right, Ian. Still produced independently, yep. So Salah Hassanein was an independent producer, and then they made them and sold them to the majors. That's kind of how they did it. They made them off their own back, and then sold it to Warner Brothers, which was amazing. It is quite amazing that Warner Brothers released one of Romero's films. So when was Creepshow? Was it 1980? I think early 80s Creepshow. Yeah, Tales from the Dark Side. It was, yes. So, I mean, that's part of the Romero thing, which is a bit icky with him and Rubenstein, because they were at Laurel Productions, and we see Laurel Productions on Creepshow and Day of the Dead. And then Rubenstein said, "I want to go into television. I think that's where the money is." And Romero said, "No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a television director," even though he had talked with Stephen King about doing Salem's Lot. But when they said that was going to be a TV movie, he backed out, and Toby Hooper got the rights to it, or at least took the job over. But there was so much that was lost. With Laurel and Rubenstein, Romero and King were going to do The Stand. There was talks about doing Pet Sematary. But Romero didn't want to go into television, so he kind of backed out of it, and that's where the sour moment in Romero's kind of history comes. Him and Gornick parted ways. Gornick directed Creepshow 2. Harrison went on to do those great films I mentioned earlier, June, and did those excellent films. I think Harrison's went on to be a great director in his own right. I think he can stand up there with Romero. I think Harrison's a great director. But there was from what I've read and what I understand, there was some sore bones between them guys, because they felt like Romero was leaving them to go to Hollywood and leave them in the lurch. But he did give Gornick the chance to direct Creepshow 2, and I think that's a great film. And Tales from the Dark Side, he came back, he wrote the screenplay for the movie. Tales from the Dark Side that Laurel produced. So he did stay with them for a little while, but then he went on his way, made Monkey Shines and Dark Half, which were Hollywood productions, and then spent kind of the whole decade of the 90s in a kind of film purgatory. He was writing films that never got made. He wrote a mummy film that never got made. He developed a film with Meryl Streep called Before I Wake, which never got made. But he did say that he made more money than you could possibly imagine writing films in Hollywood that never got made. Hey, David Dredd, yep, I love Something to Tide You Over and The Crate from Creepshow. It's a great film, Davey, it really is. I think Creepshow is a fantastic film. I think Leslie Nielsen's just perfect for it. Something to Tide You Over is a fantastic flick. It really is. A fantastic segment, I should say. And I mean, it's got some great special effects work in there. The kind of matte paint of the house in the background on the beach. And you've got those great kind of, when the monitor shorts out and Galen Ross is on the beach. Spooky. But I can hold my breath for a long time. That's great. That Leslie Nielsen thing. It's showtime. It's fun. It's fun. And that's one thing that I guess Romero, even as far back as Night is, this is a pretty horrific film. But it's still fun. The action in it, it's still fun. And I think he always kept that in his work. There was always an element of fun to it. Especially later on with films like Bruiser. I think there's a lot of fun in Bruiser. Which he made, I think that was his first Canadian-produced film with Grunwald, who went on to do Romero Grunwald Productions with. And then they made Bruiser, Land, Diary, and Survival of the Dead. Those movies. But there's a lot of fun in those movies. I mean, especially Survival. It's almost like a comedy Western thing, Survival. It's crazy. He did say he wanted to make a Western, I think, with that one. Took me a long time to get that movie. I remember seeing Survival in its very, very limited run. I think it was about a week. I had to rush to get tickets for it, and there was no one there to see it in the UK. There was no advertising for it. Next thing I know, it's in Asda when I was getting my shopping, so I bought the DVD. But it did take me a long time, and I guess in Romero's canon of films, Survival is my worst one, I think. I mean, I do watch it still, but it's not my most liked film of his. But but yes, it is. I went off on a bit of a rant there, but Tide You Over is awesome. Awesome. Harris's breakout flick. This is a strange one, but he was in a Charles Bronson action movie called Borderline. I think it was Borderline. And he was this kind of crooked guy that was bringing people over the Mexico border with America. And someone saw him in that, and he got cast in The Right Stuff off the back of that, if I remember. But his first starring role was definitely Night Riders with Romero. And I mean, obviously, he went on to be a great actor. I think he's great. But I would say, in terms of breakout, yes. I mean, The Right Stuff, he was playing was it John Glenn he was playing in The Right Stuff, I think? The astronaut John Glenn. Is it John Glenn? Am I right? I think it was. But yeah, Right Stuff's a great film. Thomas Wolfe book was great. The film was great. Kaufman's a great director. Talk about remakes. He directed that great remake with Donald Sutherland of Invasion of the Body Snatchers in like 77 or 78. He's a very good director. I really enjoyed The Right Stuff. That was Dennis Quaid. I think that was the first time I saw Dennis Quaid in The Right Stuff. But yep, I would imagine that was his breakout. But he did do a film. The first time I remember seeing him was in my mother, believe it or not, was a massive Charles Bronson fan. She loved him. Thought he was the sexiest guy in the world. So she used to watch Bronson films a lot. And I remember seeing Ed Harris in Borderline with Charles Bronson. That's the first time I remember seeing him. He did do a great noir. Was it China Lake or China Moon? Which was really good. Kind of an erotic noir with Madeline Stowe. I was kind of early in his career too. But yeah, Right Stuff was fantastic. And I think it was John Glenn. First choice to direct the Resident Evil film. Yes. I haven't seen that documentary about it yet. Has anyone seen the documentary they made about Romero's Resident Evil? I'd love to see that. I haven't seen it yet. It seems like it will be a really good documentary, though. I remember he directed the trailer for Resident Evil 2, the game as well, right? With Brad Refreno. Which was a fantastic trailer. And I mean, he seemed like the perfect choice to me. I do have a soft spot for the Anderson films, but that's for another stream. Yeah, he directed the advert for the game, Kerry, yes, so it was the advertisement for Resident Evil 2, yeah. So this is what I mean, here we go, I mean, back to Night. Why wasn't Cooper letting him in? I mean, it's like, I think Romero was really trying to say something. I mean, the door's kicked in now, that's it. You know, this is it. This is the end. Because they've totally just totally let each other down. They don't trust each other. They don't like each other. But if they'd just gotten along, man, what's that thing with John Nicholson in Mars Attacks? Why can't we all just get along? You know, if they'd gotten along, it would have been fine. But there's definitely something there in Romero's films about that. There always is. The breakdown of society. It's like a microcosm, you know, a microcosm of society in here. You got Ben and Cooper. They're the two sides of this microcosm, you know? You got the family in there, the nuclear family with the kid. You got the boyfriend and girlfriend. You got Barbara and Ben. So many ideas, so many ideas. But I guess that does happen too when you're a young filmmaker. I mean, many filmmakers in their young stages are guilty of putting too many ideas into their films, I think. I mean, speaking about this earlier on, we were mentioning Bonnie and Clyde. We were talking about Easy Rider. You know, we're talking about the kind of the beginning of American new wave cinema, the beginning of the director is auteur. You know, the kind of beginning of the sorry, not auteur, but the writer director. You know, the so you got guys like Peter Bogdanovich coming out. You got guys like Martin Scorsese coming out. You know, that's off the back of this kind of freedom, kind of lunatics taking over the asylum. This always freaked me out. The scene. It's the music. So this is Romero, the editor. This is music he bought, but he stretched it out. So you get that slow, spooky sound. And he always loved this stuff. I mean, I remember seeing Day of the Dead for the first time and thinking this is the scene from Day of the Dead at the end when the camera pans across, the blood squirts on the microphone. You know, the zombies have gotten down into the bunker. You know, anything that they ever fought for is gone. So what was the point in fighting for it? Because it was going to get taken away anyway. You know, I love all that stuff. But that's always there. There's a couple of scenes in Dawn too where the zombies have taken over the mall and they're on the ice rink at the end and he's playing the great gonk piece of music. No matter what you fight for in the end, if you're not good about it, it's not going to happen. I love that. Yeah, reluctantly helping Ben Carey, yes. He is very reluctantly helping Ben. He's trying to save his own ass because Ben kicked the door in. If Ben hadn't kicked the door in, he would have left him outside. Scary stuff. So, you know what it is? It's funny with Judith O'Dea playing Barbara. Romero always said that he kind of wrote the stronger female characters later in his career because he always kind of regretted the fact that he made Barbara into a kind of screaming stereotype. You know, she welcomes you into the film, kind of, you know, the good-looking white girl, brings you into the film. Then she goes crazy and she's kind of catatonic for the rest of the movie, right? And he always said he regretted that. So he tried to write stronger characters later in his career. So you get like Asia Argenta in Line of the Dead. You get Laurie Cardille in Day of the Dead. You know, you get Galen Ross at the end who kicks ass in Dawn of the Dead. You know, she survives because she wants to survive. There's that great line in Dawn of the Dead when Flyboy, and she says, "I want to learn how to fly that helicopter because if something happens to you, Stephen," you know, and he goes, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." And not Roger, Peter says, "You're right, man. She's right." You know, so he spent the rest of he kind of said himself, he spent the rest of his career apologizing for not writing a stronger female character in Night because they all kind of just whimper away. But I guess obviously the mother gets killed because it's her daughter. But he said he spent his kind of whole career trying to write stronger female characters after this because he felt he'd let them down. But I guess with Day, he wrote one of the strongest, in my opinion. I really love Laurie Cardille in Day of the Dead. I'm really surprised she didn't kind of shoot to stardom after that. But from what I've read, she ended up working on Broadway a lot. Oh, I agree, Ian. Yes, I do. Ian's just said, well, I guess some people in real life would be that way in such situations. I totally agree. Yes, I do. And I've always thought Romero was far too hard on himself for that because you would be. I would be freaking out, man, let alone Barbara. I would be scared. I wouldn't know what I would do, in that situation. I used to work in a pub called the Black Bull in Wardley in the kitchen as a kitchen porter. And me and the chef were big Romero fans and would stay in the pub after, that big screens in the pub and would stay after hours and put Dawn of the Dead on and stuff and watch them and have a few beers. And would often fantasize about what we would do in the zombie apocalypse. We'd say, okay, we'd go out the back, we'd shut the back doors where we'd bring in all the food, would lock that up, and would hammer it shut. Just have these kind of fantasies about what we would do in the zombie apocalypse. But I don't know. I totally agree. I think people would react that way. Definitely would. Some people would go insane, I think. I mean, there's that great show, The Walking Dead, even though I wasn't a huge fan, but that showed the whole thing, that people would go through. But there's a great one I know that not everybody's a great fan of this, but I absolutely adore Diary of the Dead, from 2004. Was it 2004 or 2008? Might have been 2007, actually. But it was Romero's film after Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead was such a big financial success that everybody was throwing money at him really fast. No. Yeah, I know, Kerry. I'm sorry. I do. I love Diary of the Dead. But it was they just kind of threw money at him because Land of the Dead was such a big success. So they kind of threw money at him. He made Diary of the Dead. I really liked it, and it did actually make a lot of money, and that's what got him the financial, aid for his last film, Survival. But the thing is, Diary and Survival was so close together that he always said he didn't have time to plan Survival, and that's why he ended up saying it was the most unprepared and possibly the worst film he ever made because it was so unprepared. He had a couple of weeks to go into it because people were throwing money at him to do it, so he did it. But I love Diary. I think it's a great film. But I'm a big fan of the found footage genre, though. I really am. I really like Land too. I think Land's great. I think it's probably worth doing a stream on Land, Diary, and Survival, the kind of last trilogy he did, because we do separate them, right? We do see Night, Dawn, and Day, the original trilogy, and Land, Diary, and Survival are the kind of last trilogy, similar to the way we did with Lucas and the Star Wars movies, or at least those 6 Star Wars movies, not all the rest that have come since. But it's a good way of breaking up his career, I think. And but I appreciate his final films. I think Bruise is really good. I don't think he ever kind of got back to the heights of something like Night Riders, which is a fantastic film, or something like Creepshow, or especially Day of the Dead. I don't think he ever directed a film better than Day of the Dead. But the ideas were still there, and I do admire them. But I said earlier on, it took me a long time to like Survival. I mean, I'm talking about 7 or 8 watches. I only kept watching it because I'm such a big Romero fan, really. Question for you in the chat from Kerry. Do you think there is an overarching story within the 6 Dead films? I think there's overarching themes of society, but I don't think there's an overarching story. I think Romero always spoke about day one, and Night was day one, Dawn was kind of day one. It kind of went back to day one, and that's where the story came from. And then Day of the Dead was a couple of years into it. I'd say Day. I mean, I don't know. I'll open this up to the chat, but I would say Day of the Dead's probably a good few years into the apocalypse. Maybe's 5. I'd say maybe's 5 or 6 years into the apocalypse because I still think that there's some hope. Diary of the Dead is definitely day one because it goes back to day one, which I really liked. So Land is 20 years in the future, right? Land must be at least 10. At least 10. Must be a decade at least, Land. But it's funny watching what was the one that did the Danny Boyle, 28 days later. There's that whole thing about them starving to death eventually. How do the zombies starve to death eventually? Because their bodies are dead. They're going to rot. Romero zombies will rot. So how far in the future could we say Land of the Dead is? Because the zombies will be rotting. The dead corpses. But the brain is the thing that's still alive. It's an interesting conversation, it is. But yeah, Carrie, you think Night and Dawn all within a year. Day's about 10 years. Land is 25 years. Yeah, it is a long time, but it does seem like a futuristic film. It does. And I would say survival. I don't know. You're talking about maybe's a decade too, if that. Maybe's even a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, because he pops up in Diary, the same character. I forget the actor's name now, but he's a great actor. He pops up in three of Romero's films. But he pops up in Diary, and then Land, and then Survival. So that same characters in all three films. So there is a kind of thing there, and you know what it is. Come to think about it, he is the same character as Diary, because in the beginning of Survival, he says we held up these kids in a van, and they show clips from Diary. So there is an overarching story there in the final three, perhaps. Perhaps. That's something to think about. Oh man, that's so tragic. And the film when Carl Harmon's reaching for his daughter. To me, this is the scariest moment of the film. This when they all get into the house, and Barbara finally starts fighting until she sees. This is why I was saying earlier on in the graveyard when you see the glove, really pays off here. That was really good filmmaking. You see Johnny in the car, he pulls his gloves on. You see him later on in the yard, he's like fixing his gloves, and you're thinking, why is he doing that? So this payoff will come in the end. It was great filmmaking, I thought. Oh man. I think open this up to the chat, but who's your favorite zombie? I think Karen Cooper's my favorite zombie because she scared me so much with this. She picks up the tool, which is something to talk about in all the films. You know, Dawn of the Dead, the guy comes on the radio, Richard Liberty, and says, you know, not Richard Liberty, sorry. I can't remember his name now, the guy with the eye patch. Starts talking about how they've started using tools. Then Big Daddy smashes the place in Land with the drill and the machine gun. Bub uses the gun. Oh, that sound, you see what I mean about the sound? Romero is a fantastic editor. He edits that sound perfectly. He really does. And that's the moment that really terrified me the most out of any Romero's films. Scared me that. Still does. It's creepy. Vice versa, on this apocalyptic note, I think it's notable that Day of the Dead has characters living in a missile silo, like the zombies have replaced nukes as the threat. Yeah, I know what you mean. It is totally that. It is. He always said that. Romero always said that he thought of the zombies as kind of a natural disaster, like an earthquake or a fire or a flood, you know, that would wipe a place out. Because a natural disaster always pits people against each other, makes the smart people think about the smart things. How do we get out of this? But he always kind of thought of the zombies as a natural disaster. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Exactly. They did. They replaced that. They're the threat now, you know, and there's no one else to blow up. It was there's a great line in, I think it's Dawn, when it says, why don't we just drop nuclear bombs in all the major cities? It's like, well, it's too late. And then in Day of the Dead, Richard Liberty, Dr. Logan, Frankenstein, you know, he says the right thing, that they outnumber us to 500,000 to 1 or something, he says. The time to have, you know, destroyed the cities or shot them in the head would have been in the beginning. You know, we'll let them overrun us. Great. He thought about it all. I love Logan. We'll have to do a watch along a Day of the Dead. It's a great movie. It's 40 years old this year too, 1985. Ah, man, and all that time, Ben fought not to go into the cellar. It's crazy. That was really good in the remake. The one Tony Todd. Cheers to Tony Todd. When Tony Todd that's it. I'll have to grab another beer after the film's over. But he does the same. It's great when he's looking for the gas pump key and he finds the gas pump key in the sequel. I really thought that was a cool addition to the movie, to the remake that Savini did. He actually finds the gas pump key downstairs. Ah, that beautiful sound there. You've got that stretched out notes. It's just perfect. So scary. And he does end up killing Harry. That's what he wanted to do all along. The makeup still looks great. The sound still looks great. The performances. I mean, it is the. I mean, we talked about Bonnie and Clyde. We talked about Easy Rider. We talked about Cassavetes, Varda, Truffaut, Godard. But for me, this is, in my life, this was the beginning of modern horror. It was the beginning of horror as I knew it. It really was. I mean, I am a big Corman fan. I love Roger Corman's Edgar Allan Poe films. I love Hammer horror, massively so. The gothic horror is one of my favorite genres of horror. But with this, Romero just nailed it. He brought gothic horror. He brought meta horror. When you think about it, I mean, this is way before anything like Horror High or Scream. He's got characters in a horror movie, referencing horror movies. They're coming to get you, Barbara. That's characters in a horror movie referencing horror movies in 1968. I mean, that's pretty hip, man. as I'm sure I was trying to use a parlance of the times there, but I am sure that was, I'm sure that's what he was thinking. That's pretty cool. I'm not even sure. I mean, it is. Night of the Living Dead is one of my favorite Romero films. I think just because of the impact it had on my life. I mean, I would say, like I've said earlier, The Day of the Dead is his best directed film. But I really do like Diary of the Dead, and I'll put that in my top 3, I think. I know that Kerry would be upset, but I really do love Plug. Yeah, John, doing a special on Day of the Dead. And yes, me and Kerry will be doing a chat on Day of the Dead in October on Cinema Conversations on Kerry's channel. We'll be doing a live stream about that because it's 40 years old. So plug, Cinema Conversations. Check it out, subscribe. There's 2 awesome videos on there already about Stephen King and David Cronenberg. But there's like a really creepy atmosphere here at the end of Night as well. That music he plays, like everything should be fine now because everybody's coming. Help is coming. This is Chilly Billy here coming up. Apparently, this famous dialogue, "They're all dead, they're all messed up," was totally improvised by the actor. But this is Pittsburgh getting involved in Romero's filmmaking. He didn't have any of this. He just rang up the police and said, "I'm making a film. Would you mind coming along?" And yeah, sure. I mean, that's fantastic spirit. So here we go. That's Chilly Billy Cardell. The local news crew came along. So Kerry, this is so grounded, whereas Horror Prior was fantastical and perhaps not as scary to the audience as the time. But Night has the visceral feeling, and you have sympathy for the characters. Yes, I do. But at the same time, I don't know how much sympathy I have because I would have done things differently. Or at least hopefully so, anyway. I hope I would have been different. Like I was saying earlier, I might have been like Barbara. I might have been the one on the sofa crying my eyes out for the full for the full zombie apocalypse. But I would hope I would be one of them that survived and did the right thing. It is. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, Kerry. It is. It's a wonderful thing. But I probably just would have been a blubbering wreck. I'd have been the dead guy upstairs. That would have been me in the apocalypse. But he really did. Romero did something really special. I mean, all these zombies here, the zombie who gets shot in the head here, the famous one who was on all the DVD covers for a while, was a lawyer that worked with the firm. He got everybody to be involved. There's a really cool quote from Romero when he says that he wouldn't be a zombie. he's like, I don't know why all these people do this. If somebody paid me $1 and asked us to sit and make up for 6 hours and then wait around for half a day to get filmed, I wouldn't do it. So there he is. That's the guy I was talking about before. That's Vince Stravinsky. From Romero's archives and stuff. He helped him so much with his earlier films. There was some guys who did fireworks and stuff locally, who did all the blood and squibs and stuff. And like I was saying, Vince kind of built a bridge so that they could get across to the house. So cool. It was a real community film. And that's incredible. It really is. But not just that. Like I say, it's that organic feel it has. So I've come full circle. That's what I love about it. It's the film that made me want to become an editor because everything that you get taught, it shouldn't work, but it does. Because Romero knew exactly what he was doing and knew exactly what he wanted, and he put it together painstakingly so. A true artist at work. And then here comes possibly. Do you think it's one of the most tragic endings in horror film history? It's got to be up there. Ah, that's it. He's dead. Ah, great opening line, great ending line. Okay, he's dead. Another one for the fire. It's actually a really good making of documentary with the cold, another one for the fire. Such a great line that. And I mean, there was a couple of times I remember, I think it was Savini who was saying, I watched Savini do a commentary on the film once, and he was seeing all these kind of slow motion images at the end, especially with an African American, made it seem like a lynching or something that was wrong, that shouldn't be happening. It was really interesting that Savini said that. I remember that. They're not my words. I'm pretty sure it was Savini, but they did use a similar thing at the end of Night 90 when they did the slow motion, not slow motion, the still images and the kind of zoom in, zoom out on the images. But it's a great ending, and I guess it comes from Romero and Striner and Russo, Carl and Marilyn Eastman working in making advertisements and stuff, and just using every tool they had to make this film work. Bill Heinzman, there he is in the credits. Great. But it really works. It does. And I think Night of the Living Dead is, in my opinion, possibly one of the great horror movies of our times. What do you all think? It is darkly humorous, definitely. Vice versa, definitely. There is, in all of Romero's work, I think there is a dark humor. And I think a lot of the horror guys, I've just done a video on The Shrouds by Cronenberg's latest film. And there's a sense of humor in that film that is really dark. And I think a lot of the horror guys have this dark sense of humor. And I think that's kind of what makes it work. Because, to paraphrase from Cronenberg, because I've just been watching all his interviews to make the last video, is that horror's or humor is a survival mechanism to horror. You know, you giggle when you're in the cinema and something happens. Or when a jump scare happens. I remember saying, well, anyway, that's the end of Night of the Living Dead. I really enjoyed watching that and talking about it. I'll just cancel that so it doesn't play Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson as the next video. What did you all think? I really enjoyed watching that. And like I say, for the first stream, I figured why not do a movie that I love so much. So, Carrie, I think Dawn for me overnight, but I stress you can't deny the impact of the film. Yes, you can't deny it. It has a massive impact on cinema. If you guys want to stick around for 2 seconds, I'm just going to go and grab another beer. But if you want to, feel free to check out. But I will be back to chat if you want to do some more chatting. But I must get another beer. So I'll be back in a second. Thanks very much. And we're back. That's quality service. Sorry to keep you waiting there for 2 minutes. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. And thanks to everyone who joined us. Thanks to Todd and Kerry and Perry. Everyone who joined along. Thanks for vice versa. We've had some really good chats. Thanks to Davey as well. Davey Dead. Awesome. But it was just one of those movies, man. It was blew us away. It really did. It still does. Just watching that there now. I mean, one eye on the chat and one eye on the stream and one eye on the film. But because I've seen it so many times, I could hear the music. I knew what was going on in the scenes. It's just one of those movies that's been with us my whole life. It really has. All those different versions, different times on VHS and DVD, and then the colorized version from Hal Roach and all those different incarnations. But I mean, we lost Romero in what, 2017? Can you believe it? What we're in now, 2025. So 5, 6, 7. Ah, man. Seems like 2 minutes ago. I was really upset about it. He was one of those deaths that I was really upset about because he really inspired my love of cinema. He really did. So, what do you think? So, Kerry, I know you were saying that you love a few of his other ones. Dawn over this one. What does everybody else think? I mean, lately I've been watching loads. They did Martin. They released Martin from, I think it was Second Sight. Did this great release of Martin that I managed to get my hands on. It was a fantastic release, and I've been watching that one a lot more lately. So that's a Perry. I have 5 lighters in here, all dead. I need to go to the gas cooker. BRB. Well, cheers for joining us. If you don't blow yourself up, you can always come back, Perry. But no, thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. I had a really good night. Hope you did too. But, I mean, what do you think? Is this worth doing again? Would you all come again? This is the first one. So you've joined us on the first ever Boneyard live stream. And I've enjoyed it. Hope I didn't talk too much rambling on. But, yeah, it's always good. I know it's always good to talk areas into other fans. Hey, Dunlop. Thanks. Certainly. Thanks. But yeah, I was really nervous before we started. I was thinking, am I going to be able to do this okay? I had had a couple of cans before I came on. just sort of kind of get that, I don't know, the social liquor going. But I mean, Romero was just, he's the best. I know me and Kerry on Cinema Conversations, thinking about doing a Romero video as well. So if you enjoyed this one, you might enjoy that one. But he was just one of those guys. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the stream, getting into zombie movies, you know. I most likely wouldn't have seen films like Lucio Fulci's films if it wasn't for Night of the Living Dead. It really was the first film that kind of got me into those gory films. And when we're watching the film, we didn't really talk about how gory it was. For the time, for 68, it was pretty gory. I mean, there's a great review from, I think it was Roger Ebert, and he kind of disregarded it in 68 and didn't think much of it. A couple of years later, they were showing it in matinees to children, along with films like, I guess Hammer films and, like B-movie horror movies, Vincent Price films, things like that, House on Haunted Hill, William Castle films. And he says he never saw so many children so afraid in his life because they were all sitting there watching Night of the Living Dead, all these kids, and they just had no kind of emotional barrier to deal with it. And he reevaluated it after that, and he said it was a great film. I mean, it is now. I remember Romero talking about it with the latest release, the kind of remaster Criterion. This is actually in the Museum of Modern Art now. I mean, that's incredible that a film by a first-time director who done advertisements and industrial films before this, his first film is now in the Museum of Modern Art. And luckily, Romero was alive when that happened. So he was kind of able to see, wow, my film's in the Museum of Modern Art. Well, Dunlop, yep. It's a matinee showing, yep. I would imagine you're right. But, man, he just said that those children, this is Ebert, just said those children had no way to deal with the kind of, like the violence, what they were up against. And it is a very violent film. But as we mentioned, it was those EC comics. It was Romero said, let's go for it. Let's do it. If we're going to do it, why don't we do it? And I think it's those kind of filmmakers that break the mold. It's been a while since I think we've had a filmmaker of that kind of caliber who's just kind of gone for it. I mean, we've got people like Julie Doctanu and Carly Fagit with Titan and The Substance. Um, but they're kind of referencing stuff that was done before. I think somebody else paved the path for their work. But Romero was wholly original, I think, in his work. He was influenced by Richard Matheson, I Am Legend, yes, the book, and he wrote The Treatment and this short story based on Matheson. But then when him and Russo got together, and they said, let's turn the family next door into killers, and it's not the castle in the hills anymore; it's the people next door. They really did something. I think it's incredible. I really do. So it's been a pleasure to watch it along with everybody. But definitely don't watch the colorized version if you're watching this stream for for advice on which version to watch. I know I do have it behind us there on the wall, but that's for nostalgic reasons. Don't watch that, no matter how nostalgic I sing about it. Dunlop, you might expect to see something like that at some late night showing at a drive-in, yes, but not a daytime screening with little kids in the audience. Exactly. And that's what it was. Night of the Living Dead kind of got lumped in with those other films because it was in public domain and because it was considered I guess a monster movie. Got that kind of B movie, monster movie tag to it. But then people started to realize it, and it was those kind of screenings that got it noticed. It was that Roger Ebert review did get it noticed, and then you got those the kind of prestigious guys, like we mentioned earlier, Truffaut, loved it and wrote about it in Cahiers de Cinema. And then the next thing you know, it's in the Museum of Modern Art. Can you believe it? Night of the Living Dead in the Museum of Modern Art. And all that from one guy, Carnegie Mellon, Pittsburgh, who wanted to make movies. And I've just always loved that about Romero. He's influenced me in the most positive way possible, and that, anybody can do this. You haven't got to be in Hollywood. You can do it. And obviously, I've never made anything as good as Night of the Living Dead, but he inspired me to want to. Also, they don't have a rating system, as we later knew it. Yes, indeed, Dunlop, it was. So films like that were there all day. They would show all day in cinemas. Films would show all day, and you could go in any time of the day to watch them. You would have an A movie, a B movie, and back in the day, I'd C and D movies as well, like really low grade ones. Talking Roger Corman stuff, like Little Shop of Horrors that was shot in 2 days, that would show us C and D movies, and they'd be on all day in the matinees for the kids. I mean, there was also scary matinees. There were, you got stuff like The Phantom with Bela Lugosi. I mean, there was scary matinees as well, but I just don't think kids were ready for that. Or at least even I wasn't. When I saw it at that really young age, I don't think I was ready for how gory it was. But it definitely impacted my life, and it's one of the films that made me want to make films, made me want to study film. And I guess that's why I wanted to choose it for the inaugural film for the Boneyard Lives. Carrie, I suppose kids back then, in our generation, were more attuned to horror. I know the first grown-up book I read was Haunted by James Herbert when I was 7. I have read that, and I did see the film with Aidan Quinn as well. But you can blame my dad for he got me into gothic horror subgenre, a la Dr. Jekyll and Frankenstein, etc. It's always been one of my favorite genres. Gothic horror, always. But that's because I grew up watching them too. It was kind of late night horror movies on, this is English television. So this has got to be Channel 2. This is probably before Channel 5. So we had like 4 channels. And before the channels kind of closed, in the mornings, they would show Hammer horrors. And it was things like The Beast Must Die, or which I think might be Amicus, actually. But it was, I remember seeing The Beast Must Die. I remember seeing Dracula, Horror of Dracula, Brides of Dracula, The Curse of Frankenstein, I remember very well, because that was pretty gory for the time. I think that was 57. Was it The Horror of Frankenstein? I can't remember. All kind of bled into one. I watched so many of those Hammer films. But I grew up watching those too, and I fell in love with gothic horror. And then I got into Corman because of the Poe films, Mario Bava because of those beautiful Italian kind of gothic horrors that they made. So it's always been one of my favorite genres. And I think it must have been one of Romero's too, because it's definitely there in Night. That gothic horror vibe is definitely there with the lightning flashing and those two in the graveyard in the opening with Barber and Johnny, it's there. That's a gothic horror vibe, I think. And I mean, you're in the kind of old dark house of the Charles Lawton kind of old dark house, James Will. But it's not the old dark house. It's the farmhouse next door. He didn't make it some creepy place. It was just your house. And that's what I love about it. I mean, for me, that was the beginning of it. I mean, there is horror before this, like we mentioned earlier, like Psycho. And Psycho is the house in the motel, but it still looks Psycho still looks like the haunted old house at the end of the street. It does. I mean, it was at Universal for years, right, as a ride. But there's just something about Night that made it seem like it's the people next door. It's your girlfriend. It's your boyfriend. It's those people across the lake. You've got to watch out for. He had such a dark humor, like we were saying. It is funny, and he had this kind of dark humor, Romero, which I love. I really do. And it's there in all of his work, I think, right the way through till the end. Like I say, Survival's almost like a comedy. It really is. I mean, Survival is a full-blown comedy, I guess, when you look at it. You got the guy blowing people up with the dynamite and stuff, and the guy making the YouTube video and all that. All that stuff's almost slapstick. The guy with the fishing rod, if anyone can remember in Survival, where he's on the beach and not the beach, the roof of the hut, fishing, and he gets a zombie on his fishing line behind him and pulls the zombie into him. It's all slapstick stuff. I think Romero just tried to do different things with it. I did really like it, as I said earlier, when he did the found footage with Diary. I think Diary is a very underrated film, but it's fair enough that people don't like it, and I understand. I've had many conversations about it, and there must be something about that people don't like, and I respect that because a lot of people don't like it, which is cool. It's cool with me, but I really do love Diary. There's something about it I really like. I love the kind of awkwardness of it when things are falling apart and they kind of fall into a trap because they trust somebody and they shouldn't trust somebody, and he invites them back to his house and then they're in a trap. And it's similar to Night or similar to Day or similar to Dawn. We all get caught in these kind of private traps. And I think that's definitely a thing in Romero's work, especially in Dawn. It's the consumerism, I mean, they get blinded by consumerism and they get in there and they think they've got everything they could possibly ever want. And of course they haven't. They haven't. You need safety and health and love and passion, and even Flyboy and Fran kind of fall out of love with each other. When he offers her the rings, their love's kind of gone. It's that consumerism's killed everything. Kills a friendship between Peter and what's the other guy's name? Peter and Roger. Kills their friendship because Roger wants everything. And I think that's definitely a theme in the movies. You mentioned that before, Kerry, about the themes in his work. I think there's definitely a kind of hippie theme in his work that, that we've got everything we need. You don't need anything else. You shouldn't have everything, And if we all work together and we're all friends, things would work out. But people don't. They never do. And I think that was a message in his works. I mean, we're talking about Night Riders earlier with Ed Harris, and that's a theme in that too, I mean, you've got this kind of team of workers, which, from what I've read and from what I understand, Night Riders is very much an autobiographical film in Romero's career. I mean, he talks about Night Riders as kind of him and his crew, this bunch of wandering kind of artists, independent. We'll talk about that before when we're talking about Salah Hassanin, and all the films were independent until the Soul Creep show to Warner Brothers. They made them independent and then sold them. And I think Night Riders is Romero and his crew, these kind of wandering artists, and what happens in the end of that implosion. It all implodes, and it did. It did eventually implode. His relationship with all his Gornick and even Christine Forrest. They ended up getting divorced in the end, him and Christine Forrest, and he married another woman who now is Goff, the George A. Romero Foundation. His wife, his widow, is looking after the foundation now. But I think that's what Night Riders was about. It's about that kind of implosion. And he definitely had a message in his films, especially after Night. I think he kind of realized that film could have a message, especially. And I think he did kind of work something into them all. What do you guys think? Kerry, it was foreshadowing in the worst possible way, sadly. Yes, it was. I think it was foreshadowing Night Riders. I do. And I mean, it is a fantastic film, Night Riders. We mentioned it earlier. It's one of his two non-horror films. There's Always Vanilla and Night Riders. But you could argue The Amusement Park is non-horror, but it's more of a public information film that's got horrific elements. And I guess if I'd paid him to make a public information film and he came out with a horror movie, I would have been upset too. Which I think is the reason why that film got shelved for so long. It was for, I think, it was for the Lutheran Society, if I remember rightly, about to help the aged. I think that's what The Amusement Park was about. But yes, it was. Night Riders, I think, was foreshadowing the falling apart that did come eventually with Laurel, with Romero, with Rubenstein, Romero and Gornick. That whole crew that they had going, I think it really did. But he's a very smart filmmaker. And as we know now, in retrospect, looking back at his work, we talked about this earlier on, looking back in retrospect, or hindsight, looking at a director's works, a director's collected works, there is themes throughout all Romero's work. And he was from the hippie generation, as a lot of the people that I admire were. We're talking about horror here: Carpenter, Cronenberg, Toby Hooper. A lot of them, Stephen King, they were all from the hippie generation. So they kind of grew up they were born in the 40s, grew up in the 50s and 60s, had this idealistic view of the world, and then boom, it was destroyed with Tricky Dicky in the 70s. And that narcissism's always there, I think, in a lot of their work. It's definitely there in Carpenter with stuff like They Live, which is a film about the government and Reagan. It's there with Toby Hooper, with consumerism, I think, in Chainsaw Massacre. It's definitely there with Craven, who was the same. He was a guy that grew up in the 60s. You've got, Society and People Under the Stairs, which is about the rich, just keeping the poor man down in ghettos and saving the money for nothing. All these guys have these kind of hippie values, for lack of a better word. And I really love that about these horror filmmakers. And I think that's kind of what horror filmmakers of today are missing. They kind of look more inward instead of outward. I think Romero made films about society. I think Craven made films about society. Carpenter did. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do love horror. I love modern horror. I just recently watched Terrified. I thought it was fantastic. Terrified. And I've yet to see When Evil Lurks, the director's next film. But I loved Terrified. So there is modern films out there that are, but the message to me is more internal now than external. It's similar to, I guess, I love Bob Dylan, for example, the songwriter. And Dylan sings songs about other things. He doesn't sing songs about himself in his early work, in the work that got him world renowned. He sings songs about Hattie Carroll. He sings songs about the race riots. He sings songs about times are changing. He sings these blowing winds of change, blown in the wind. He sings songs about the world. They're not internal, they're external. Singing songs about what he sings. And I really like that about these filmmakers, or at least the horror makers from this period, and writers, I'm including Stephen King in this, that they write things about what they see in the world. It's not necessarily internal. I think a lot of it's external. And I love that. And I think that's what Romero's films are about. They're about society. They're not necessarily about him or his place in society, but they're about society. And I love that. It's like an artist's best work is when they paint what they see, I guess. At least that's what they used to tell us when I was studying film. Write what you know. And I think Romero made films about what he saw when he looked out there in the world. And I really admire that, man, about his work. Let's just carry in the chat, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Martin is a horror. I mean, it could be described as a character study on teenage mental health. Yes, it could be. And Romero always said that he didn't think Martin was a vampire. He thought he was just a mixed up kid. I can't recommend that enough. I didn't bring it upstairs. I could show it to you, but there was a great second sight release of Martin. They did a kind of hard box set. And there was a great interview with the Gornick, and the name escapes me now, but the editor of the film was there. And they talk about it. They kind of go to the locations and walk around and talk about the movie. And there's an archival interview with Romero, and then he says Martin's not a vampire. He actually says, I never saw Martin as a vampire. He was just a mixed up kid. But Martin was affected by those around him, and it was the people oppressing him, like his uncle, that made him think that. If he just ignored that, he would have been okay. But he didn't. He believed it. And it's kind of like that whole thing about Romero being an independent. Martin wasn't independent. He believed what people told him. And I think there's always something there in Romero's work about that. And I think Martin's it's a great movie, it is. But there's always something. I mean, I'm totally just rocking and rolling now on stuff we're talking about. But I think there's definitely always something about being an independent in Romero's work. Undoubtedly. I mean, right down to Bruiser. That guy breaks out of the Jason Fleming character in the end, breaks out of his corporate job, breaks out of his corporate life, breaks out of that horrible relationship he's in with a cheating partner and horrible boss. He breaks out of it and becomes an independent guy. I think Romero always wanted to be independent. And it's that hippie spirit that I think people like him and Carpenter and Dennis Hopper, that those filmmakers had because they were part of that generation. I think King has it too. I love Riding the Bullet by King, which is possibly one of the most autobiographical novels he wrote, other than the Tommyknockers, which is about the time he grew up in. It's about the music. It's about his journey to see his mother when she was sick. And I think it's those ideals, those hippie ideals, that kind of really make these guys stand out because they've got ideals. They really have. They're not about the individual. They're about everybody. And I think Romero saw a better world somewhere if we all just got along, if Harry and Ben got along, if Dennis Hopper and John Leguizamo got along, if in Line of the Dead, if people cared about their friends, like in Diary of the Dead, the guy wants to keep filming. He doesn't care about his girlfriend, right to the point where zombie jumps on her and he's still filming the zombie eating her instead of helping her because he wants to make a movie. There's something to be said about all of this in Romero's work. I think he always had something to say. But like I say, I had that great conversation with my friend Glenn Criddle from Cynical Celluloid, who said, especially with Night, there's a lot more meaning in hindsight than there is in the films actually being made. And I think that makes sense. I do. I think Romero made films in his time, low budget. So he was making them low budget with the technology of the time, with the clothes of the time, with the actors of the time, and that always helps. We love film noir, the style of it, the costume of it, and that's all accident. That's just because studios couldn't afford to buy costumes. They couldn't afford to use the best cameras. They couldn't afford to use loads of lights because they couldn't afford it. Whole genre came out of that film noir. And I think it's the same with horror. Low budget horror has a special place in my heart because a lot of it is almost a time capsule of the time it was made. We talked about Bob Clark earlier, for example, with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Death Dream. And they're total time capsules of the times they were made. And that, to me, makes those films a little bit more special. The Crazies by Romero is a film of its time. And it's a time capsule. It is a beautiful film, I think. And I would put it up there. I think top 5 Romero films, top 3. Because even though those phaser of the time, he puts the monk in there who sets himself on fire. He talks about nuclear weapons perhaps being used. He talks about the government the government killing people willy-nilly because they don't want the disease to spread. He talks about the government not being someone you can trust in The Crazies. That's why I like that movie so much. I think it's a great film. It's like it's a film of the end of the 60s. It's the end of the hippie dream. The Crazies is the end of all that flower power. That's don't trust anybody. And I love that about Romero's work. There's always that cynicism. Kerry, you know what they said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but having a low budget makes you learn how to do things practically and or find alternatives. It does. And I know that from experience, from making my own short films. It's you have to use what you've got. and it does make them of their time. It really does. But sometimes they transcend time, like I think a film like Night has done, because, and that's probably why it does stand the test of time, and that's why they wanted it in the Museum of Modern Art, is because it's got those messages, or those themes in it. Themes, I should say, not messages. It's got those themes in it that are almost universal. Love thy neighbor. They don't. They don't love thy neighbor. They hate each other. They hate each other, the fact that they try to kill each other, in fact. And they do. They end up killing each other. But if you did love thy neighbor, everything might have went all right. Help your friends. They don't help the friends. Cooper doesn't open the door. You should open the door, but he doesn't. And I think those are all universal themes. And you think, who, I mentioned this earlier, would I be the screaming, the screaming person that lost my mind? Would I be like Judy O'Day? Would I be like Barbara? I don't know. Would I be like Ben? Would I be strong? I don't know. Would I be like Cooper? Would I try to? I mean, I hope I wouldn't be like Cooper. I hope I wouldn't turn against everybody. But what would I do? And then you've got Judy and Tom. Is it Tom? Judy and Tom. They're just the two. Judy and Tom. They're just the two kids who were trying to get along. They just want to get along with their lives. They've got no stake in anything. They were just making out at the lake when all this happened. So it represents everybody. Who would you be? And I think that's there in all of his work. I don't know. In Dawn, I would hope I would be like Peter. but I probably would have been more like Roger. I'd have been like, "Come on, let's go, let's do it. We've got everything." But you don't know. And in Day, I'd have probably been John Amplis. I probably would have get my brains blown out because I'm a nice guy. I probably would have just been nice to everybody, or at least I hope I'm a nice guy. I would have tried to be nice to everybody all along. And those themes are in it. There are. They definitely are. And I think that the budget makes him kind of write those characters sometimes, because he has to write complex characters. Do you know what I mean? I think in Romero's work, he writes complex characters because they are low budget films, or at least they were until Monkey Shines. So he tries to write these characters that are representations of society, and he gets all his ideas in them. But then once he gets into the later films, Monkey Shines, Dark Half, the Hollywood films, I should say, or the bigger budgeted films, I think they'll lose that because he's not putting himself into the films anymore. If that makes sense, they don't feel like. So Monkey Shines and Dark Half, for example, don't seem to have the message in them that Night, Dawn, and Day, or Martin, or Crazies, or There's Always Vanilla, or Season of the Witch do have. Do you know what I mean? Vice versa. Well, I think I'd have been more like the Hells Angels in Dawn myself. I wish I would have been too. I'd love to be with Savini riding that bike. I know what you mean, Vice. I'd love to have been him. I've got the tash. I could have combed the tash, or at least I think. There's that great scene where I was watching Ken Foray talk about it, who plays Peter, I think. And Tom Savini ad-libbed that line. I see you, chocolate man. And Foray went, what the hell is he talking about? But Savini got proper method, and he was trying to be this like racist biker character. And it was, I love the stories about Dawn. People falling asleep in the mall and stuff, and zombies waking up and scaring There was a great story Savini told about because it was a big indoor mall at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, they had to stop filming. But about 6 o'clock, there was a bunch of old folks would do exercises in the mall, like doing their jogging and walking around. And Savini says it was one morning where there was a whole bunch of zombies in full makeup just walking down, the aisle in the gallery, I guess, or the galleria, walking down the mall, and these old folks saw them and freaked out. And Savini was so scared. He was like, I was so worried the next day, and the newspaper was going to be like, old folk dies of heart attack because of local filmmakers. But I mean, we'll forget, I mean, I think the budget for Dawn was only like $1 million or $2 million. And that film seems epic. And I feel the kind of same way about the Crazies, you know? It was he did so much with those minimal budgets. And I'm pretty sure that Creepshow and, like say where they were independent, Creepshow and Day were pretty independent too. I think Day was 2 or 3 million because they wanted to do an X-rated cut, but Salah Hassanein said no. You can't have that cut of the film because it's going to cost us 8 million. If you want an unrated cut or whatever it was, we'll have to do it for 2 or 3 million, and he did. So he kept the gore in and did the unrated version instead, which meant they couldn't distribute it as widely. But he stuck to his guns. Yeah, man. But I would hope to, Vice. I would hope I would be Tom Savini or one of the bikers. There's a great scene with Tasso. There's, I think it's Tasso Stravakis, I think his name is. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that if it's wrong. But him and Savini work together all the time. And Tasso is the guy that's on the arm machine when he's doing the test your strength and they come and rip his guts out. And him and Tasso worked together for years, man. And some of their stories are fantastic. If you read some of Savini's books or read some of his articles or interviews, they had a great time together. So it was, he was talking about Friday the 13th. And he was saying if you look closely, because Savini did the makeup for Friday the 13th, if you look closely when the hands come up, when they do the beheading, it's Tasso's hands. So the woman's actually got hairy knuckles because it was Tasso's hands doing the thing. Those guys must have had some great stories about the films and things, about the stories and effects they did on set. And Tasso and Savini were pretty much doing all the special effects. I mean, if you watch Dawn of the Dead, you see Tom Savini pop up everywhere doing the stunts, gets knocked over by the truck. He jumps off obviously his blade. He jumps off the balcony, but he's everywhere playing different zombies. Legend. I mean, that was a relationship made in heaven. It was. I love to see Savini and Romero together. It's like one of those things that makes us happy. I know some people love or it's similar to people love the DVD commentaries or Blu-ray commentaries with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, because they're just two friends and they laugh and they talk about these great collaborations they had. But I love the Savini and Romero ones. You can tell they just loved each other, those two guys. But they not loved each other personally, but loved the creativity. And there's great stories about Romero just calling him up and say, start thinking about ways to kill people, Savini. I've got a new film coming out. Vice versa. Don't they use the zombies for shooting practice in one scene? Yes, they do. They do, and they even have apple pie fights with the zombies. Not apple pie, custard pie. They start throwing cream and custard pies in the zombies' faces, the bikers. That's great. It is. I really do. Like I say, Dawn was just a movie I partied with. It really was. It was me and a couple of friends. There's a guy called Ashley Troop, Lewis Tomlin, who became the scientist I spoke about earlier in New York. And we just chilled out all the time when we were teenagers, drank and smoked and watched these movies. It's such great memories of them. Such great memories of them. And that's why I love them. Nostalgia for them. But I mean, I've kept studying them. I've kept watching them, kept understanding or trying to understand why I love them so much. And that's one of the reasons why I started the Boneyard Cinema, the channel, to chat with you guys and chat with people and try and understand why I love these movies, why I love them so much. But with Romero, I just think it's been because he was one of those filmmakers that was there my whole life. He's always been there. One of the first. It was like I mentioned earlier, there was Hitchcock, Peckinpah. I got into Romero very early on. So I started watching his stuff. I mean, when I first started watching Romero, I didn't even understand really that it was low budget cinema. I just understood it as cinema because I was so young. I mean, I'm talking so young. I'm late tens, early teens, very young. So I was just watching them as films. I didn't understand there was a difference. It wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 that I started to realize that these were low budget films, and it was when I started really reading about Romero at about 13 or 14 years old, started to realize this guy was like remortgaging his house sometimes to try and make films. He wasn't like a Spielberg or a Cameron. He was doing this independently. He wasn't even working with studios. He was doing it independently. And that just made me love him even more and started to read books on him. And at the time, there was a book, I've got it up here somewhere, This was a big book in my life. It's right up here, actually. Great. This must have been mid 80s, maybe early 90s. I guess it was early 90s. The Zombies of the Pittsburgh, which is about him making Night, Dawn, and Day. Paul Gauguin, and it was a great book. Very, very good read, and it really inspired us a lot because it talk about, it talks about all of his films. I can't recommend this enough. It goes right through Night Riders and all of his history of cinema, and it really goes in depth with interviews with Romero, and he talks about what he was doing and how he did it, and you realize that he was doing it off his own back, man. He spent there's a great interview with him and the director who directed Pan's Labyrinth. His name escapes me now. Del Toro. There's a great interview with him and Del Toro. And Del Toro was kind of interviewing him, and Romero says he talked about his early career because Del Toro saw Martin with his family and he loved it, and he really got into Romero. And Romero says, I spent my whole career trying to tell other people, Del Toro, yes, thanks, Kerry, trying to tell other people that we can do this, because he was the director. And he said, you don't understand that when you're working in independent cinema, people doubt it all the time. And he said, I spent my whole career telling people we can do this. We can do it. We can shoot this. We can score this. We can edit it. We can get these actors to do what we want. We can do anything. And he had this passion for cinema, but also a passion in him, passion and belief in himself to do this. And I just find that so inspiring, man. I really do. I don't think I would have made my first short films if it wasn't for Romero. He really did push us forward. I mean, there's a certain, I love David Lynch as well. There's one of his early films from 77, Razorhead, which really inspired us too, because he just made that off his own back over a couple of years. And there's a couple of directors who really inspired me like this. Cronenberg with Shivers. But Romero really inspired us. Yeah, for Lynch. Yes, Kerry. Yeah, for Lynch. He's great. He really is. But it was that book, The Zombies of Pittsburgh. I remember reading that and just thinking, man, if he can do it, why can't I do it? True inspiration. And one of the inspirations is that it was him. You realize when you look back at the interviews and stuff with him, people worked with Romero because he was different. He was a creative force in nature. You believed him. Gornick said this. I know they fell out. We were talking about that earlier on. But Gornick said that you believed him when he said, we can do this, man. We can do this, dude. If somebody else has done it, why can't we do it? And it was inspirational, and he got people to do what he wanted them to do. A director in the very true sense of the word. He directed people to get these things done. And man, that's just a true inspiration to me. And he left this awesome legacy of films behind. He really did. I mean, Land, Diary, Survival, love him or hate him, he got him made. He got him made because I think it was 2004. There was a Zack Snyder remake of Dawn. And I remember going to cinema to see it and thinking, this is all right, man. I quite liked the Zack Snyder remake. I didn't like it at first, but I wanted to see it again. And I kind of thought, okay, I know what he's doing. This is great. It's good remake in its own right. Enough of the tip of the hat to it, to the original Dawn, for it to be a good movie. I do think it was good enough. The tip of the hat, was good enough. And then because of the success of that movie, Universal said, why don't we go back and get the original zombie guy? And that's how he got Land. And then he got Diary and Survival off the back of that. It's funny how things work. It really is. And like I say, we talked about Land, Diary, and Survival. I love Diary. I think Survival was too rushed. It was a Western that he wanted to make. It was almost a comedy Western. I love, I can't remember the actor's name now, who played Wyndham Earle in Twin Peaks, who's in Survival of the Dead. I think it's Ken somebody or other. He was in the remake of The Fog as well. But I love his performance in that. I think that's a really funny performance. It is almost slapstick at times. It was the end of Romero's career. I guess maybe he was just playing around a bit. I had to convince myself to like it. I did. And I guess that's the biggest drawback of Survival. I had to convince myself to like it, which is never good. So I've always considered Survival as Romero's weakest film, I guess. Kenneth Walsh, yes, thank you, Kerry. Kenneth Walsh, yeah, Kenneth Walsh, yeah, Wyndham Earl in Twin Peaks, and I remember him being the mayor of the town as well in the remake of The Fog. But it was just one of those. Romero is one of those filmmakers that made us think you could do it too. I guess that's why I wanted to do Night for the first stream. What time are we on? Does anybody want to keep going? I'm out of beer, I think. I might have to run down and grab another one. But, I don't know. All right, I've got half a can. But it's hard to tear away from talking about Romero because I love his movies so much. Well, let's keep going. It's up to me. I'm all right. I've got half a beer. If you guys are still here, I'm still here. It's been really good to do this. I'm really, like I say, I'm really thankful that you guys turned up. I wasn't sure if anybody turned up for the first one, but there was lots of different options. When I put it up, I tried to I wasn't sure if I should try to advertise it. Sorry, on different platforms, but in my opinion, it's been a great first one. I just kind of wanted to test it to see if it was possible. But we've had some fantastic chats. It's really great, and I guess it's nice for everyone to see that this is the Boneyard that I talk about when I say welcome to the Boneyard. This is my studio. I guess if I lift the camera a little bit there, you can see a little bit more. There's a sniper there, Basquiat, witch hunt. There's there's some kind of stuff. That's my cameras over there in the corner. There's a light there. But this is where I make everything. The green screen's over there in the corner where I make the movies. So this is the Boneyard, literally. Welcome to the Boneyard. It's nice for you to see it. Perry, have the cooker lighter thing up. Here we are, so I'm good now. Awesome. Hey, thanks very much, man. Thanks for joining us. I much appreciate it. The refined solitude. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's this is the first one, so I just thought I'd go for it. Do one of the films I love the most, so I could talk loads about it. Hopefully, and hopefully talk about stuff that isn't too much spout and gobbledygook. Because I've been researching this film for years. But yeah, I always loved him. Romero's always been one of my favorites. But it was, I mean, Romero, I guess when you talk about films and young film fans, or at least this is how it goes with me. I mean, this beard's died. Believe it or not, this is all grey. I am pretty old. but Romero was kind of like a gateway. I mentioned that earlier on. Night of the Living Dead kind of led to Manchester Morgue, and then that led to Fulci, and then that led to many, many more zombie films. I mean, I can't think of them. Zombie Holocaust. I know I mentioned the one I love with John Saxon, the Cannibal Apocalypse, and the Video Nasties. I mean, Romero led to all of that for me. It was Night of the Living Dead was the first one that really got me into, the horror of it all. But there's a couple. I mean, there was, I remember seeing, I mentioned Lynch. I remember seeing Eraserhead for the first time. And that blew me away because I didn't realize horror could be that kind of non-linear. I mean, there is a story to it, to Eraserhead. And it's, Henry's with his wife. He gets to meet his wife's family. They're not happy. It's like being uncomfortable. It's just the uncomfortableness, almost the absurdist comedy of life, I guess Eraserhead's about. But it's also quite horrific and full of horrific imagery. And there was another film, Carnival of Souls, that we mentioned earlier by Herc Harvey, which was, I got that on treated VHS. We kind of treated it around with each other. Someone said, if you like Night of the Living Dead and Eraserhead, you might like this, Carnival of Souls. And then the fourth one kind of was from 87, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. And I'd never seen Prince of Darkness. Now, it was already out at the time by a good few years. Maybe it's 4 or 5 years. Maybe it's longer. Maybe 6 years. And somebody said, if you like zombie movies, man, you'll like Prince of Darkness. And I was like, well, John Carpenter made a zombie film? But it was like part of I think it was 3 low-budget films he'd done with Shep Gordon, who was Alice Cooper's producer, from what I understand from the DVD commentaries and things. And I thought that was a cool zombie movie too. People kind of forget that Prince of Darkness is almost a zombie movie. Got all these zombie guys outside. But Night of the Living Dead started all of that. It did. And some of the best horrors have been zombies. I really liked The Sadness recently. I thought that was a really good zombie movie. Anyone in the chat, man? Is there anything that any zombie movies you'd like to talk about? Because there was so many good ones. There was a crazy one a few years ago. Can you remember when Dead Set came out? Anyone? Here in the UK with Davina McCall was a zombie. It was all based on the Big Brother house. They did a remake of it recently in Brazil, I think it was. And Dead Set was zombies in the Big Brother house. And kind of off the back of that, there was a couple of TV shows came out that were kind of like remakes of Survivor. And there was like there was a one called The Last Train, which was about like an apocalyptic future. With there was so many good ones came out for a short period of time. It's a really low budget one called The Vanguard, I remember. But I just started buying anything with zombie in it. Vice versa, the Shep Gordon produced Wes Craven's Shocker, which ain't that good in my opinion. Yeah, it was the same company. They were the same guys. The name escapes me now, but it's got the same logo right at the beginning. Shep Gordon's company. I mean, Shocker was okay. I like. I'm a big X-Files fan, so I like the fact that Skinner, Mitch Pileggi, was Shocker, the killer, and I like that. I mean, this was pre X-Files, right? This was 89, maybe. It must have been 89, 90 at best. Must have been late 80s, early 90s because of the kind of heavy metal, hair metal soundtrack, which is good. I quite like the soundtrack. But yeah, it wasn't Craven's best. I do like it. I do like it, but I agree that it wasn't one of Craven's best. I mean, with Craven, I kind of like Craven's like lesser known ones. He did a TV movie called Chiller, which I loved, with Michael Beck from The Warriors. It's and Paul Savino too, playing this priest. It was a TV film he did. I really liked that one. Craven's got some hidden gems. I mean, obviously, what do you call it? Hills of Ice is not a hidden gem, but that was another one similar to Night of the Living Dead. That was kind of mind blowing to me. That was the beginning of my introduction to Wes Craven. Hills of Ice was the first Craven film I saw, and it was just off the back of that artwork with Berryman. Is it Michael Berryman? The actor, I think it's Michael Berryman. Correct us if I'm wrong. He has kind of a bone disorder, so he's got kind of a protruding head. He's got no fingernails, and man, that guy's so great in that film. But it was the atmosphere of Hills of Ice that freaked me out. It really freaked us out. It was similar to Night of the Living Dead, in fact, that the family gets dissolved, and the dad, who's an ex-cop, I believe. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I think the dad's an ex-policeman, and so he's gone. And the family are left to fend for themselves. Dee Wallace gets killed in that. My God, the beautiful Dee Wallace, who's in The Howling and E.T. and all these great films. Hills of Ice, fantastic. I am a big Craven fan too. It'll be good to do a stream on Craven, actually. Big Craven fan. My first Wes Craven flick was Deadly Blessing. Cool. That's the Sharon Stone, right? With, is it Ernest Borgnine? Am I mistaken there? It might be Ernest Borgnine. I only remember little bits of it, but I think Berryman was in Deadly Blessing too, right? Am I getting Borgnine and Berryman mixed up? I remember Michael Berryman was in Deadly Blessing too, right? There's that horrible story about Sharon Stone not wanting the spider to bite her, so they took the spider's fangs out, and that meant the spider died. She was a prima donna even then in her first couple of films. But it tells if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I think it might have been Berryman, or is it them both? Is it Berryman and Borgnine? Or am I getting them mixed up? But I collected Craven stuff. He was great. I remember the film that he did with what's it called? With the girl next door who turns into a robot and she flipping blows the next door neighbor's head up with a basketball. Perry, I have Deadly Blessing on Laserdisc for some reason. Cool. I don't know if I watched it though. Can you remember Laserdisc? I loved Laserdisc. Believe it or not, my mother right, worked at Philips Electronics. She used to put chips in television sets and stuff. Worked hard her whole life. And so we had a Betamax and a Laserdisc and stuff and a VHS early on because my mom could get them from work. So we had them all. But I remember Laserdiscs, there was a film called, actually, Perry, me and you have discussed this. I love late night radio station films. Films that are set in radio stations late after night. And we talked about maybe it was Liminal Space, where I liked them. Like we had a whole psychology session on that. But there was a great film called Dead Air with Gregory Isaacs in it, all set in a radio station. I had that on Laserdisc, I remember, and that's really hard to get now. I don't think you can actually get a DVD, but I have the Laserdisc somewhere here. I think it might be in one of the boxes under the FTW picture back there. But I do have a few Laserdiscs. Some of them are best. I mean, I'm a big Rutger Hauer fan, and it's still hard to find Salute of the Jugger, which is getting a DVD or Blu-ray release soon. But I've still got the Laserdisc of that too because I loved it so much, and I do still have a Laserdisc player, Philips one. Wow, I would love that job. Oh, man, she loved it. Perry, my mother loved it. She worked there for years, and eventually Philips were bought out by, I think it was LG Electronics. But yeah, but that's how we ended up getting. We had a couple of players. We had a Betamax, which I saw like ET on and stuff, and then we had Laserdisc, and then VHS. But yeah, I know what you mean. Vice versa. The CD players, they were slow and skippy, weren't they? I remember them getting drag on them. But Kerry Salute of the Jugger is rarer than hen's teeth, as my uncle would have said. I find it for $6, €6. My local CX in 2023. Well, Kerry, we'll have to praise because there's going to be a release of it soon. There is. I'm not sure whether it's 4K or Blu-ray, but there is going to be a Salute of the Jugger soon. If I could take the camera outside and show you my staircase, I've got the poster framed for the VHS. I love that movie so much. it's out there in the hall, but there is going to be one. Up until now, there's been a Japanese Blu-ray, but it was terrible. It was a really bad kind of. Hadn't used a negative. It wasn't a very good one. But it's a great movie. It is. You've got Joan Chen in there. You've got Vincent D'Onofrio. It's written by David Peoples, who did stuff on Blade Runner. It's a fantastic film. I'm a big Rutger Hauer fan. He was, I mean, back in the day. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember. It was a long time ago now, almost 3 hours. But when we started the stream, I was talking about the action heroes I used to love. So I loved, Van Damme and Kickboxer. Chuck Norris, I had the Octagon, and good guys wear black, and I loved my action films. Red Scorpion, Dolph Lundgren, all of them. Arnie, but Rutger Hauer was always my go-to guy because he was just the best actor. You had like Salute of the Jugger, but you also had films like Wedlock, with Joan Chen again. Actually, they worked together a couple of times. You had films like Armageddon, which he did with Albert Pyun, who's another low-budget filmmaker I love. It was Rutger Hauer was almost like the best actor, I think, of the action guys, if that makes sense. He could really act. I mean, I know Stallone and Arnie and Jean-Claude Van Damme, have their moments, but Rutger Hauer could really act. And in those films, man, especially Salute of the Jugger in the 90s, he could really act. He did a great movie, which was a kind of a TV movie version of Dead Calm, the Philip Noyce movie with Sam Neill, Billy Zane, and Nicole Kidman. And he did one with Eric Roberts himself and Karen Allen called Voyage. Man, incredible film. It's on YouTube if anybody ever wants to watch it. That might be a good watch along. It's obviously a TV movie remake of Dead Calm because it was so successful. But my goodness, Billy Zane, Rutger Hauer, Karen Allen, fantastic movie. And Rutger Hauer was just always my go-to guy. I remember when he did Blind Fury, which was based on a comic. I just love Blind Fury so much. He was just one of those guys I went to. It was like when you were buying videos, or you went to rent them. If Rutger Hauer's name was on it, I'd grab it. He was one of those guys. I loved him. Lady Hawk, yeah, vice versa. That was Richard Donner, man, wasn't it? I might be wrong, but I think that was Richard Donner with Michelle Pfeiffer and Matthew Broderick. Yeah, it was a great one. He wrote a great book recently. Well, not recently. He died a few years ago. But just before he died, he wrote a book. Everything's recently to me now. I'm getting older. It seems like if it was like Cronenberg. I was talking to Kerry. We were talking about Cronenberg films the other day. I was like, oh, yeah, when he did that. And I was like, yeah, John, that was like 15 years ago. Seems like 2 minutes ago. But there's a great book that Rutger Hauer wrote called All Those Moments, based on his line from Blade Runner. All those moments will be lost like tears in rain. And what a fantastic book. That guy was just so genuine, so nice. He tried his best. AIDS, towards the end of his career, him and Christopher Walken were making a film, and I think it was Antigua, and he wrote about it in the book. And AIDS was decimating the local people, because AIDS was a new thing then, and no one knew how to stop it or do anything about it. And made Rutger Hauer start his own charity for AIDS prevention. He's a fantastic guy, and I think in real life he must have been a pretty cool guy too from reading that book. But he was always kind of my go-to action guy. So if I still to this day, I've got like a Rutger Hauer section on my physical media shelf downstairs. I generally tend to go towards him for action. I am a big Arnie fan though. I like Arnie, and I do watch Kickboxer a lot. Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Tom Berenger too. I'm a massive. Well, actually, I showed you earlier on. There's a poster there in the corner. You can't really see it, but that's Billy Zane there. Tom Berenger in Sniper. It's another one of my favorite action movies. But I'm a big action movie guy. And Rutger Hauer was one of the best. But like I say, getting back to Romero, he was a very good action director by the end of his career. For all that people gave Survival and Darien Land not the best reviews, he was a fine director by then. But it was all just solid gear. I don't think it was anywhere near as good as Night Riders, as Day of the Dead, or as Creepshow. I think that was his pinnacle as a director. And Night of the Living Dead, I think, was just made out of pure passion, a drive, and a want to make films. And I mean, watch it again with what I mentioned in mind about the editing. The editing's perfect. It just flows. It grows organically. And there's not many films have ever done that in film history, I don't think. And especially not a first feature film. And I mean, it goes to show that he couldn't make another film not as good, because I think The Crazies is as good as Night of the Living Dead, but he couldn't get funding for another film for a long time because he was using that as his playground. And then by the time he did get a day, I think he's a master. I think he's a master director by the time he gets to day. Excuse me. If you still do want to go on, I've run out of beer again. Sorry, I should have brought 2 cans up. But I'll be 2 seconds. I'll be back. If you still want to stick around, because I'm really enjoying talking about this. See you soon. Sorry about the dead air there for a sec. I love that Romero didn't rest on his laurels. That's a good one, Curry. He didn't. He didn't even stick around with Laurel. But I think, like I say, man, I mean, he gave them every chance he possibly could. I mean, he gave Gornick Creepshow 2. Harrison went on to direct some great films in his own right. He worked with Clive Barker on Books of Blood, which I really recommend. But I'm a big fan of Harrison, in my opinion. I think I mentioned this already, but in my opinion, Harrison is the best of the kind of Romero alumni. I think he went on to be a great director in his own right. I mean, when I remember when they did the new June films by Denis Villeneuve, the new June Chapter 1 and 2, I think it was. I was kind of saying to people, "Have you seen did you watch the miniseries that John Harrison did? It's really, pardon me, it's really good." And John Harrison did June, and then there was Children of June after it with with James McAvoy, which was a great film too, a great series, I should say, with Susan Sarandon, great actresses. But I'd read the books when I was a kid, and I thought Harrison nailed the books. I really did. I thought John Harrison did a really good job. Well, that's why I've got the poster there behind us. I really did. God, it's really hard to point when you got there. It is, but I really like John Harrison. But I mean, again, I've got Romero to thank for that. I wouldn't have known who John Harrison was if he wasn't Romero's assistant director, and he did. He really tried to give the guys from Laurel a chance, I think. And he wrote the film Tales from the Dark Side. He wrote the screenplay for Creepshow 2 that Gornick directed. I think he really tried to give those guys the best deal he possibly could. But at the same time, he wanted to go and try and make The Mummy in Hollywood, and it failed. But he tried. He did. So he was resting on his laurels. That was a good one. No. Oh, what's up, Vice Versa? I'm going to fall out of this chair, but yes, I am. I am. Well, do you know, it's just, that's what I kind of wanted this to be. I just wanted it to be an informal thing, you know. I was nervous. I was. So I had like I say, I had a couple of drinks before we started, but not serious drinks, just a couple. But I'm really glad that you all joined us, man. It's my pleasure. It really is to sit and talk to you. That's really what I wanted for the channel. I've been putting off doing these live streams for years. I mean, I think we're in the 4th year now of the Boneyard Cinema. And I always wanted to stream, but I was always too nervous. And Kerry, you've helped me with that a lot with Cinema Conversations. And my friend Glenn did too, who I've mentioned a couple of times from Cynical Celluloid, Lampy Man 101. You know, they've kind of got us on streams as well, but I wasn't sure if I could do it myself. So I guess I was a little bit nervous, Vice. So I thought I'd have a couple. But hopefully you've been able to couple or a cup of tea with us as well. All right. Drawing Energy Pictures, Dutch Courage. Yes, it was. That's great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes. How are you doing? I haven't seen you for a long time. But yeah, we studied together at university. But yeah, it was Dutch Courage, totally. But I've enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed it. And it's talking about something I really love, you know. It is. I mean, that's what I love more than anything else. It's like, one of the reasons I started Boneyard was because, we've all got friends, right? And sometimes we can really sicken our friends by talking about movies all the time. I used to drink in this pub and they'd have bets. So I'd come in the pub after work and they'd have bets on how long it would take for me to start talking about movies. And that's when I was like, oh man, maybe I should try and find some other friends who like to talk about movies. And hopefully we'll found them with us. Cheers. Cheers, Energy Pictures. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much. You look great too. I've been following you on Facebook. Just got back from a screening of Bring Her Back. Most messed up movie since Hereditary. Right. That was the Australian YouTubers, right? Who directed, what was the movie they directed before this? About the hand, where they shook the hands and they went into the kind of netherworld where the main actors ended up in the end. It wasn't Bring Her Back. It was yes, Talk to Me. Yes, Talk to Me. Talk to Me was fantastic. So I've been really wanting to watch Bring Her Back because those two guys were just YouTubers. They started off making kind of strange VFX films, shotguns blowing heads off and things, and then ended up making these great films. And I really did enjoy Talk to Me. It was good. I wouldn't say it was like a great horror film, but I really enjoyed it. I really did. That's fantastic to know. But I have been meaning to go and see the new one. I have. Yeah, Bring It Back. I definitely have. I love Bring It Back. Beautiful cinematography. Well, I do love a nice bit of cinematography. In one of your vids, you said you are teaching Could you elaborate a bit? Yes, well, a bit actually, funnily enough, drawing energy pictures. We studied at ARU in Cambridge, Anglia Ruskin University, formerly Cambridge School of Art. So we studied there, but at the time I was also teaching there while I was doing my master's degree. And then when I graduated, I kept teaching there, and I ended up teaching there for 5 years under Catherine Elliott, who was a master's degree teacher there. Catherine Elliott's a fantastic woman. She got me quite a lot of work doing advertisements for things like what was the oh man, it was a charity and I can't remember the name now. The one with the green tree. I can't remember the green tree. It was like man. Anyway, I can't remember. But anyway, I ended up working with her and we got a few jobs. Thank you very much, Energy Pitches. John is a fab teacher and fellow student. Thanks. But yeah, so I ended up teaching film for 5 years. But I taught editing, cinematography. I also taught film history, how to write a short film from beginning to end. So we looked at how to fund a short film, how to write the script right from the very beginning, from the very idea. And kind of one of my big things, which I studied with drawing energy pictures when I was a master's degree student, was my dissertation was on how do ideas develop and where do ideas come from and how do we develop those ideas into solid works. So how do we get it out of our head onto the page? Yeah, and I did that for 5 years, and I'm still teaching part-time, but not full-time anymore. So I go back still and do editing classes, teach students how to edit, but that's from the very basics. So how to use motion controls, how to flip images around, how to do layering, how to create titles from the very basics, right up through advanced editing techniques into how to do green screen work, how to do, I guess the most complicated thing we've done is multi-layered work it was Shakespeare's Globe. So we're doing special effects movies that were very special effects driven. So that was green screen mixed with miniatures, mixed with foreground, background, going right back to stuff like the shifting process, which is mirrored work or glass work, similar to something like Metropolis by Fritz Lang. So I teach all that. I've taught that for 5 years, but now, unfortunately, not full time, now part time. But I do work as an editor, and I edit pretty much digital content at the moment. But I also edit short films. I also direct music videos, which you can find online and things like that. If any more questions, I'm happy to answer. Hopefully that answered the question for you. But anything else, I'm happy to answer. They're using DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere. So that's a big question. It was so pretty much this is us talking about uni stuff. But so we learned on Premiere, but then there was this big shift to Resolve, right? If you're an editor, you'll know that Resolve is free software. You can download it. So especially with universities being institutions, they want to go for the cheaper option. So they did go for the cheaper option, and they decided to stop paying a subscription to Adobe in favor of a free program, DaVinci Resolve. And I fought against it, and I did get to keep Premiere because I think it's a fantastic program, which is what I use still to this day, Premiere. But I do think DaVinci is a great program, and we talked about, especially on a stream like this, about Night of the Living Dead. We're talking about earlier on The Walking Dead, which was color graded totally, the whole series, using DaVinci Resolve. So DaVinci Resolve did the color grading for the whole series of The Walking Dead. So it is a fantastic program, but I prefer Premiere Pro, which is because I've used it for a decade. but yeah, I tried to fight for it. I did Energy Pictures. I tried to fight for it. I really did. And so Adobe's kind of getting wiped out a bit now in favor of cheaper software, unfortunately. But I do love Adobe. But most of the work I've done, excuse me, recently has been on Adobe. So I think most of the main studios are still using Adobe from what I can tell. So I do freelance work. I just did some freelance work for a space station Um, Space Station. I did some work editing Space Station material for a YouTube channel. That's all Premiere. All the special effects, everything we all did in Premiere. And I still think it's the best program. Hurrah! I think it's good to use both, honestly. A holistic approach. Yes, I prefer Premiere too. Yeah, it is best to use both because, I mean, especially if you want to get work as an editor, it's best to keep your mind open. I mean, when I first started editing, I was using Final Cut 7, and the original program I used was Avid Media, which is I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. So I was really happy to use Avid because that's how Unforgiven was edited. It was edited on Avid Media, as was Bridges of Madison County, these Clint Eastwood films. And if you watch at the end of the credits, you'll see back in the day, you used to get the editing software pop up when we went from cinema Steinbeck editing to digital, which I'm a proper nerd, so I like to watch those kind of things. So at the end, you'd see them pop up, and so I was really happy to use Avid. And still, I did some work editing documentaries for the BBC about 3 years ago, and they were still using Avid. So it is good to keep your I don't know your wheels oiled and keep an approach. I would never not use DaVinci, for example, because it's such a good tool and it's a powerful tool for color grading, which is fantastic. But just for, I guess, ease and familiarity, I've always gone for Premiere because it was what I learned on and what I study the most, I guess. So I've used that the most. Uh, how can we watch our short films? Well, as you know, I'm on Boneyard Cinema, and I didn't want to put my films on here because it's not reviews or it's not kind of film analysis. It's not video essays. So you can watch a few of them on here, but you have to pay for it. It's 99 pence to become a member here on the Boneyard. You can become a Boneyard regular or a Gravedigger. Gravedigger, you can actually ask me what reviews you'd like me to do. But if you do want to watch my short films, the Freedom Room's on there. Things That Happen, which is a BAFTA-nominated short film I made about alcoholism, which was actually made during Energy Pictures. We made that together at uni. I don't know if you remember, but there's a few short films on there. There's lots of 1-minute short films I made while I was a teacher with students that I put on there just to talk through. There's some animation films I directed on there, 2D animation, 5 or 6. A lot of the films I've made I can't put on here for copyright reasons because I wasn't director on them. I was editor. So unfortunately I can't. But if you're willing to pay 99p, you can see 5 or 6 of my short films here on the Boneyard, which are for members only content. And then you could pay 99p for a month and then cancel the subscription. But that's how you could see them. Solitude if you wanted to. Yes, you do. You do remember Energy Pictures. It was great. It was. I got really heavily into. I made a film called The Freedom Room when I was at college, bachelor's degree, and it was. I ended up working with prisoners in prisons, and there was a Carrie actually. I mean, you talked about this the other night, and I met a prisoner. And he found his freedom in art in his cell, and he decorated his cell with art. And eventually, I ended up writing that into a screenplay, and that was my very first decent short film. It was called The Freedom Room, which is available on the paid subscription here on Boneyard. And if you do ever want to do the paid subscription, you also get to see the film. And then there's a making of at the end of each film where I talk through how I made the films, like do a DVD commentary type thing on the films if you're interested in that. But and then when I I kind of got interested in addiction, kind of different kinds of addictions. And then I ended up making what me and Energy Pictures were talking about there at university. I made a film called Things That Happen, which is about alcoholism, and that ended up getting picked up for a couple of awards, and that's available on the Boneyard too as a paid subscription. Yeah, that's Things That Happen. But yeah, that was a tough one to make. It took a long time to make. But I just love it. I mean, I love all kinds of cinema. I love editing. I love making films. At the minute, I'm working with a local writer here in Walthamstow, and we're working on 3 films based on his plays. But that's totally off my own back. I just literally read his book, loved it. There was an email address in the back of the book. I'd sent a message saying, "I love your plays. Is there any way you'd like to make these into short films? I'm local. I've in London. I've got my own equipment." I said yes. So that's what we're doing now, and that's kind of how I'm rolling at the minute. I'm totally independent. The last films I made that had any kind of funding were from the Ministry of Defence, which were films about PTSD. I worked on those for 2 years with a director called Katie Davies, a fantastic director. But that was 2 years of my life. It was a long time. Those films were very difficult to make, as you can imagine, subject like PTSD. But at the minute, I'm just totally free rolling and making movies as we're going. Anyway, that was a long answer, but Solitude, that's how you can watch them if you want. Just like but like I said, there's not loads. There's about 5 or 6 on there, but they're members only for 99p a month. Oh, yeah. So, what does everybody else think about Romero? We've just had a massive long conversation there about that. But yeah, we'll be falling off the chair, Solitude. You're right. I think I'm getting a bit tipsy, but I love it. But I'm so pleased everyone turned up. I don't know how many times I said that. It's incredible. So, do you think? I mean, give us a thumbs up. Would you return for these streams again, everyone? Because I'd love to do another one, but we'll have to think of something else, I guess. Doesn't have to be horror, but I mean, Craven would be a really good one because Craven had so many great films. I mean, I do have Deadly Blessing, so we could do Deadly Blessing for a watch along. But I mean, watch the channels. There's so many. I mean, we could do Bring Your Own Media, which is what my friend Glenn does sometimes, where we can bring our own films that don't have to be online. It'd be great to do Day of the Dead with it being 40th anniversary this year. Might even be good to do something modern. I mean, we could do Talk to Her because the new film's out. Bring her back. Talk to Her could be a good one. But if anybody has any suggestions, let us know. Cronenberg, yes, Solitude, that might be good. Well, thanks for watching the Shrouds vid, man. It's not doing as well as I'd hoped. The vid on the Shrouds. It was I just fell in love with that film when I went to see it. Me and Kerry, we both saw it, and I went back to see it again. I think Kerry, you did too, and I just fell in love with it. It's a fantastic film. It really is. So many ideas behind that guy's work. He's a one in a million, similar to Romero. But it's like I say. I mean, we've talked about these guys tonight. You know that there was a whole bunch of them. Toby Hooper with Chainsaw Massacre. You had Wes Craven with Last House on the Left. You know, you had Romero, Night of the Living Dead. We had Fulci coming in there with Don't Torture a Duckling. You know, you get these fantastic films that were getting made by these guys that were totally out there on a limb almost, because a lot of the time they didn't know whether these films would be released or totally off their own backs. It was an incredible time for cinema, I think. The Beyond, yeah, Kerry, The Beyond would be great. Or Deep Red, yes, I do love The Beyond. The Beyond was actually one of those movies that I discovered because of Romero after Night of the Living Dead, because people were suggesting Fulci to us, and that's kind of how I got into Fulci. Zombie Flesh Eaters, The Beyond, and City of the Living Dead, which I love as well. I love that. I actually watched City of the Living Dead about 2 or 3 nights ago, and I love those guys who were sitting in the bar, like the world's ending, and it's like, you know, earthquake happens, the ground shakes, and they're just sitting there drinking their beers. I love that so much. I think it was like Fulci trying to be American. Ah, it's fantastic. But yeah, The Beyond, fantastic. House by the Cemetery, all those, man. Fulci was great. There's a lot of stuff about his work, especially with the New York Ripper, where people were saying he was misogynistic. I mean, what do you guys think? I don't know if his work was misogynistic. I think it was very dark, but he also made that one about female empowerment, the Honey film, where the woman kidnaps a doctor and keeps him naked in the basement. So I don't know. I mean, what do you all think? I don't think he was misogynistic. but there's definitely elements of that in there, so it's difficult. I mean, I love "Don't Torture a Duckling," for example, but there's the whole seductive scene where the girl lies there with no clothes on, and the young kid comes in the room, and you're thinking, he was a complicated character, maybe, but I don't think he ever meant any intentionally meant any harm or any disrespect to anyone. What do you all think? Yeah, Cronenberg's 82, Solitude, I know. I believe he is. He said that recently in an interview. Hope he still has the opportunity to make a couple more. I really hope so too. I'm a huge fan of Mark Kermode, the UK critic. And Kermode said that, and he interviewed Cronenberg about the Shrouds, and he said, I really hope he makes another one because he's so articulate. And I mean, Kermode said, I can't say better than Kermode. I've respected Kermode my whole life. He's always been one of my favorite critics because he was just kind of the critic of my generation, I guess, in the UK. I mean, I remember him on Mark and Lard reviewing stuff like Star Wars on the radio when he was really young, and me listening to him thinking, oh, I better write those films down that he's mentioned, because I'd really love him. But I still love him. He does that stuff with Mio now on the radio, and he's fantastic. But yeah, Kermode said, Cronenberg, 82 years old, there's a man who still answers questions in complete sentences. He knows exactly what he means to say. He knows exactly what his film is going to be about. He knows exactly what he's doing technically because he's been doing it for, I mean, he made his first films in the 60s, so that's 60s, 70s, 80s, 5 decades. And Cronenberg just said, Kermode said, I really hope he gets a chance to make another one. And I do too. I agree with you too, Solitude. There's not many filmmakers like him left. I really don't think there is. I mean, we lost Romero was it 2016 or 2017 Romero left us? Wes Craven left us. Toby Hooper left us. I mean, Carpenter's still here, but Carpenter hasn't directed a film since The Ward. He's done some television, which was okay, but it wasn't great. It's like some spooky American TV shows. I don't know if anyone saw them, but they weren't that great. They were okay. I did see Carpenter live when he toured his music, which was fantastic. But I mean, Carpenter, in my opinion, Carpenter's last great film was In the Mouth of Madness, which was around 94. I do still watch Vampires, Village of the Damned. I'm a big Ice Cube fan. so I actually love Ghosts of Mars. I really do, because I'm a big Ice Cube fan. I was into Ice Cube when I was a boy. He was one of the superstars of the day when I was a kid, so I love Ice Cube. And I really liked Ghosts of Mars. I thought it was apparently it was supposed to be Snake Plissken on Mars, but they changed the script because they couldn't get funding or something for it. It turned into Desolation Williams instead of Snake Plissken. But I think Mouth of Madness was his last great film in 94. And when I say great, I mean great. I think Mouth of Madness is a masterpiece. And I do like Village of the Damned and like I say in the rest of them. All right. Delamore. Yeah, but that's a great film, Kerry. Delamore. With is it Rupert Everett? The guy from Comfort of Strangers? I think it is it? I can't remember his name. I think so. Was he in My Best Friend's Wedding, that guy? Is that who I'm thinking of? Yep. The guy. But, I mean, Cronenberg's one of the last left. There's only Cronenberg and Carpenter really left from that generation of filmmakers who really had something to say, that were, and I said this earlier, but they weren't talking about themselves. They were talking about society. They were talking about other things. Modern horror, for me, has gone very introvert. And this is no offense to modern horror. I love modern horror. I love it. But the old guys seemed to talk about things that were just not themselves. They talked about the world. Cronenberg talks about the world. He talks about universal feelings of loss in the Shrouds. Carpenter talked about society in They Live. He talked about the Reaganomics, the Reagan-fueled horrible government that was still kind of got today in the UK and America. That is, that's not necessarily for the little people like us. It's for the big people, the people who own the corporations. And agree with that or not, it's a message. And I think that's what he was saying in They Live. And I think Romero was saying that in Land of the Dead, with Dennis Hopper and the Tower, and even in The Apocalypse, you've got the George I think it was George Bush, the analogy he made. George Bush up in the tower. You've got the people in the street who've got nothing. Wealth is not distributed. And these guys had messages. They did. They were message filmmakers, but there were messages about the world, not just the individual, about the world. But of course, the individual is part of that. And I think Romero's in his films. His personality definitely is. But he wanted to tell us how we could make things better, I think. And that's why I love his cinema so much. Kerry, you think you could add Lynch? I swear I'm not a huge Lynch fangirl. I'm a Lynch fangirl. But he brought attention to many taboo subjects in Fire. Yes, he did. Many taboo subjects in Fire Walk with Me and Inland Empire. He did. And I remember Fire Walk with Me being a shocking film. That was the last film of his I saw at the cinema. Just before he passed away, I went to see it at the Prince Charles Cinema here in London. It was amazing. It was packed house. Everybody still loved it. It was cheering. And for the first time in a long time, this hasn't happened, but the first time in a long time, I walked outside with Nastia, and my friend Danny was there with us as well. And people were standing outside the cinema talking about the film. And that hadn't happened for a long time. I think the last time that happened was Tron Legacy, which was a few years ago. I can't remember when Tron Legacy was. Maybe it's 2017, was it? But that was, I remember people standing outside of Tron Legacy and talking about the film. We all came up and we said, wow, that was amazing. Did you like it? Are you a Tron fan? Yeah, I was a Tron fan. And everyone started talking about Tron and Tron Legacy outside. And that didn't happen for a long time. But then with Lynch, after I left the Prince Charles, we all stood outside for a good hour and a half talking about the film. And that doesn't happen very often. That's the kind of filmmaker Lynch is. I think he starts conversations, Lynch. Inland Empire certainly did, because I think a lot of people had no idea what that film was about at all. I've still got my own personal interpretation of it, but I'm still not sure what he intended with it. I'm pretty sure the girl in the beginning is flipping through channels on a TV station, and the TV that she watches is the stories that we see, the girl in the room. I think that's the story of Inland Empire, or at least that's what's happening. We're seeing what's happening inside this girl's head. But that's a funny old movie, that. But David Lynch is a conversation starter. Cronenberg, Carpenter, Romero too, definitely. Oh, Crash. God, Crash is amazing. 2010 or 2011, goodness. I can't believe that was that long ago. 2010, goodness. That was Tron, right? 2010? God, like I say, I'm getting old, man. Everything seems like 2 minutes ago to me. But yeah, Crash, Curry, Crash is a masterpiece. I will put that in my top, if I'm not being too liberal, maybe it's my top 10 films of all time. There's a couple of films by him. I love M. Butterfly, but Crash is just incredible. Elias Koteas, Deborah Kara Unger, who is one of my favorite actresses of all time. I love White Noise with her and Michael Keaton. She's a fantastic actress. Every film I've ever seen her in, she's blown me away. James Spader. I'm a big fan of Bad Influence with James Spader and Rob Lowe, because that was kind of my time. Written by David Cope. Was it David Cope? I think it was David Cope. Or yeah, David Cope. Yeah, but fantastic film. James Spader, Deborah Kara Unger, Elias Koteas, fantastic cast. You've got Holly in there as well. It's fantastic. But it was, I remember it was still banned at the time when I saw Crash. I didn't see it for the first run. I saw kind of the second run, and I was working in London, and it was still banned at certain cinemas. And this is years after its release, but it was still banned in certain cinemas, in certain places like precincts, which was crazy to me. And that was because of the religious connotations of it and the religious banning of it in Ireland, I believe. Correct us if I'm wrong. And here in the UK. So there was still places I couldn't watch it when I saw it. It was crazy to me. But it's a great film, Crash. It is. But back to Romero. I think one of Romero's most underestimated works is Bruiser. I really like it a lot. Peter Stormare is fantastic in that movie. Solitude, the Laserdisc comes with Cronenberg's commentary. Oh, fantastic. I don't think I have the Laserdisc. I don't think I do. I have the Laserdisc of, I think it's Scanners, but I don't have the one of, I don't have the Laserdisc of Crash. But I'd love to hear that. There is a commentary on. I got a Blu-ray of it from, I think it was Arrow, a Second Sight did one recently, and I forked out. It was a Blu-ray, not a 4K, but it was a Blu-ray. I forked out 25 or 35 quid to get it. It's pretty good. It was a really good, better than the old DVD release I had, but anyway. But there was a commentary on that, and it was really good. I mean, it was one of the most amazing things is that similar to Romero, Cronenberg is a regional filmmaker. So he made Crash within 10 or 15 minutes of his house. He said, like, every day the sets were literally 15, 20 minutes away from my house because he made all of his films in Toronto, or most of them anyway. I think he spent like 6 weeks in Los Angeles doing Map to the Stars, which was not one he'd written, but one of my favorites. Well, they're all my favorites. I keep saying my favorites. But Map to the Stars is a great film of his. I really like that one a lot. But I think that was the one he spent the most time in. And he also did the sound for the not the Dark Half, the Dead Zone. He did the sound for the Dead Zone in LA as well, which was Dino De Laurentiis produced, I think. But he did the sound mix in LA for that. So they're the only two films he ever made in LA were Dead Zone and a little bit of Map to the Stars, if memory serves. Well, thanks for joining us, Energy Pitches. I really appreciate it. Got work in the morning, so heading off. Lovely chat. We're dropping on the next live stream. Take care. Thanks very much for joining us. It's great to hear from you again. Take care. It's on YouTube, Solitude. Cool. I'll check it out. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, to talk about these films. It really has. I'm starting to run out of things to say, but I can keep talking if you want us to keep talking. I'm sure I can. For the Greek, I think we've talked about everything from Rutger Hauer to Cassavetes to what else? To Independent, Bonnie and Clyde. We talked about everything tonight. That's been crazy. Night of the Living Dead, George Romero, the Millennium release. Good news on the good news on the remake. Pardon, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the remake is getting an uncut release soon. Tom Savini's release. Up until now, we'd only be able to see. I bought a book. It's up there somewhere, which was just a sec. I'll grab it. Which was Savini's storyboards for the film, which was really interesting because it was really cut down. And they really wanted to make it a violent remake because obviously Tom Savini was doing it, and Tom Savini's the kind of, I don't know, would you call him the godfather of gore, or would that be Herschel Gordon Lewis? But anyway, he did release this. God, look at the dust on that. I have to blow it off. But I bought this book, Night of the Living Dead 90, the version you've never seen, which is Savini's storyboards for the remake. So you get to see all the really gory stuff. See the head exploding there? That wasn't in the movie. All right? And it was great. I mean, these are all Savini storyboards. Really cool stuff. But they decided not to go for the gory version. And a lot of people said that's why they feel that Night of the Living Dead 90 wasn't the success that it should have been. I mean, in my opinion, it was a success because me and my friends watched it. I mean, I remember watching that. There's one night we came back from the club and we watched it till 2 or 3 times in the morning. We loved that. We loved that movie. We did. Me and my friends did love Night of the Living Dead 90. And I remember it being shown on, I never had cable, but I remember it being shown on Channel 5, which was a new thing in the UK. So it did get shown, but apparently not as much as the one of the two. And it was considered a flop. And that's why Savini never really got to direct again. He did direct episodes of the Creep Show TV series, which I really enjoyed. He did one about Loch Ness, which was kind of about this Loch Ness monster in the Creep Show TV series that Greg Nicotero and those guys did. And I loved it. John Harrison did a great episode too. But yeah, I'd really recommend this. But apparently, so all the gory stuff that was missing out of Night of the Living Dead 90, and it is a very good book. And it was cheap pickup, man. That was like, I think it was like $15.99 on Amazon. But word has it, there's an uncut version coming out. They found the actual negatives and they're going to release some of, not all of it, because some of it's gone, but they're going to release some of the really gory stuff from Savini's Night of the Living Dead. I mean, how cool is that, man? Little little storyboards from Savini. I remember reading about. I mean, Savini's always been a hero. Always been a hero of mine. I mean, I remember back in the day when kind of chat rooms and live streams and stuff first came online. I didn't have a computer, and I was at school. This is at school. I mean, this is kind of nuts and bolts computers, the kind that you had at school back in the day. But I really wanted to watch Tom Savini because he was doing this talk or something that was in a chat room or a live stream or whatever it was. And there was a teacher called Mr. Dove, and he let us stay back after school so I could use the computer to watch it. And I got to ask Tom Savini a question, like in the chat, and blew my mind. And it was, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge now, but I just kind of said to him, where do you get your ideas for your crazy things? And he'd said, oh, well, I was in Vietnam and blah, blah, blah. But a couple of years later, they did a documentary about, I think it was Dawn, and he started to speak about that more in depth. And man, that must have scarred that guy, because he started to talk about he was a combat photographer in Vietnam, and he said that he saw real, anatomically correct gore. So I saw guys with the heads blown off. He saw people almost obliterated by bombs. And he kind of used the camera as a defense mechanism. So it was like a distance between him and what he was shooting. And then he said later on, when I came back to the States and I was, keep on doing what I'd done before, because he had met Romero before. He'd actually auditioned to be in, I think it was Night of the Fawn, which was a film that Romero had wanted to make with Pittsburgh students before. It never happened, but before Night. So he'd met Savini before, but Savini was always into Lon Chaney and makeup effects and stuff. And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but this is all online. You can check it out. And Savini kind of said that he saw proper anatomically correct gore. So when he came back and started doing movies, like I think Deranged was one of his first ones, which was that great film that was kind of about Ed Gein, the Canadian one, with I forget I think it's Robert Blossoms, the guy from Christine. And he was also the guy that scraped the snow in Macaulay Culkin, Home Alone. He played kind of an Ed Gein type character, and it was really gory. I think that was one of Savini's early films. He did Death Dream. He also did Maniac and all these great films. Tom Savini's he's one of my favorite makeup artists. He's just a cool guy. But he said that he wanted to try and recreate those things that he'd seen for real. And I mean, that's not kind of catharsis, because I talked about that in the Shrouds review, but it must be a kind of a way of working through things you've seen in your life, man. It must be. And that might be the reason why his stuff is just so kick-ass and so amazing, because he really means what he's doing. And he would say, like, when you die, it's not like Richard Conte dying in a war movie. You don't say, oh, man, give us a last drag on that cigarette. All right, cheers, man. Good night. That's not how you die. It says you die, one eye's open, one eye's closed. You might die with a smile on your face. Your jaw droops. So I wanted to try and create this. And that's why we get these amazing things, I think, like in Day of the Dead or in Dawn of the Dead. You get these cool effects. I always remember that really cool one in Dawn where the axe is in the guy's head, the meat cleaver. It's not meat cleaver, sorry, machete. And he pulls it out of the guy's head. And it looks so great. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid and thinking, wow, that's such a fantastic effect. And all they did was cut the metal out of the machete, put it in the guy's head, pull it out and do it in reverse. But it looked fantastic. And I remember hearing Savini talk about that and saying, oh man, I hate that effect. I could have done that so much better. It's like, man, that fantastic effect, what you're talking about. And there's that amazing one in Day of the Dead where Miguel gets bit. And Sarah has to cut off Miguel's arm. And everybody said, he said he had people asking him for years. How did you do that effect? How did you keep the guy's arm moving when it was getting cut off? And he just buried the guy's arm under the ground, put a bit of mortician's wax in the middle. So the actor's arm was wiggling, but there was mortician's wax in the middle. And the mortician's wax is what the machete went into. Simple as that. He wrote a great book called Grand Illusions, which is fantastic if anybody wants to ever read. And also, for all we've talked about John Russo tonight, who co-wrote Night of the Living Dead, he also wrote a great book called Scare Tactics, which you wouldn't believe it. Scare Tactics, I'll say the title again. Quentin Tarantino cited as being one of the big influences on him making movies because he read John Russo. This is John Russo, the co-writer of Night of the Living Dead, director of Midnight, director of the Majorettes, and the Booby Hatch. Wrote a book called Scare Tactics. Quentin Tarantino read Scare Tactics, and it influenced him in making movies. In fact, I wish I had it up here. I've got the book. There's actually a quote on the back of the book from the version I bought from the 90s with Tarantino saying, "This is the book that made me realize I could make movies." So that's another cool connection that Night of the Living Dead had to someone like Tarantino. The fact that someone like John Russo, who wrote Scare Tactics, who co-wrote Night of the Living Dead, inspired someone like Tarantino. Pretty cool, right? Or at least I think it is. I'm just rambling on now, but no, it's great. It's all these great connections, but for me, it all comes back to Romero, and that's why I wanted to start with Night of the Living Dead. It really is. It's just one of those movies that inspired everything. Inspired everything in terms of modern horror, I think, and the modern horror genre. But I better go because I am pretty drunk now. I don't want to ramble on anymore. I hope I haven't rambled on too much because I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you want to come back again and do it again. But is there any more final questions that anyone has before I kick off? Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining me here tonight on the first live stream from Boneyard Cinema. Thanks, Solitude, and I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it too. I really have. It's been my pleasure. And we'll do a few more. We'll see what happens next time. Messages on the channel. You can You can find Boneyard Cinema on Facebook as well, which is linked on the channel page. If anyone has any suggestions or any films you'd like to watch or anything you'd like to discuss, we can just kick off and do a few discussion episodes or do film episodes, whatever you like. I really want to make this a thing because I really enjoyed it. I really did. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks, Perry. No rambling. All info is welcome. And good night. Thanks all. Well, that's a good one to go out on, if any. Cheers, Perry. Good night, everyone. And thanks for joining me here in the Boneyard. Cheers. Here's to George Andrew Romero. Cheers.